Imagine this, y'all. Let's say you're from the beautiful sunny state of Florida and you're planning an OTC elk hunt in Colorado, but you've never been out west. You've never seen the Rockies. You have absolutely never seen or heard an actual elk other than on TV or YouTube. How in the heck would you get ready for a hunt like that? And what kind of chance would you have of actually punching a tag? Well, y'all, you're in for a treat. Welcome to the first Grinder series from Elk Camp, where we talk to elk hunters from all over the U.S. about their elk hunts. All the learning moments, the ups, the downs, the steps, then the techniques, helping you to learn from both their successes and their mistakes. That discussion, some ElkBros shout outs, and some serious questions from our ElkBros mailbox. So my friends, pull up a chair, adjust your volumes just right, and welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your host Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Gilly. You want to hunt elk? They live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello there, everyone. If it's your first time with us, glad to have you. Hope you enjoy our show. And as always, for Blue Collar Hunters following our show and grinding it out with us every week, welcome back to Elk Camp. I'm Gilbert Ornelas, the host of your show, coming to you from Spring, Texas. And that's right, from the DFW area, we have the leader of the Venezuelan Mafia, Manano Graterón, in the house with us. And that's right, from Central Texas, from that Burnett, Texas area, we got the Flatlander himself, Mr. Cole Wilkes, one of our elk hunting coaches. And from Cimarron, New Mexico, we have the ninja, Leroy Chavez himself, and WWJGD. Joe Gillia is in the house and joining us at Elk Camp today. Let's have a warm ElkBros welcome for tonight's guest. Coming to us from his new home in the sunny sunshine state of Florida, Mr. John Lane is in the house.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, John.
How's it going, guys?
John.
Welcome.
Hey, so John,
doing?
this is the first time all the guys here have even have seen this face, man. They're wondering, they're asking me, Joe, who the heck is John Lane, man?
John, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, it sounds like it, man. Well, welcome. I appreciate you guys having me, guys. For real, this is
unbelievable.
Cool.
Heard a little bit about the story and everything, and we can't wait to dive into it. But I mean, you've got all of our elk hunting coaches here in the house. We got the leader of the Venezuelan Mafia with us, right? Manano Graterón.
Yes.
Luis gonna want to cut my head off for saying that, but it's too bad he's not here. But man, look, you got all of the personalities that are here for sure. And we are so glad to have you with us.
So do you know everybody here, John?
Not everybody. No, I don't think so.
All right.
I got Cole down here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We got Cole, Chav's here as well.
Leader of Venezuelan Mafia.
Yeah. Gilbert, I've seen you guys on the podcast so yeah.
So let me ask you, man, the question, who do you follow as the leader of the Venezuelan Mafia?
Yeah, I'm going to say since Manano's on, Manano. We're going here.
This year when
please, John, be honest, bro.
Yeah. Hey, I am.
You know, John, when we were on the mountain this year, it got really tough, and Manano led us off, as he does most years. He led us off with the bloodshed, and Luis said, we're going to let him be the leader for a day, right? So it's a standard joke that how long Luis is going to let him lead. And I say it all the time on the podcast is, the leaders of the Venezuelan Mafia. But at the end of the day, tonight we got the leader with us.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
At least tonight.
What do you do for a living, John? Sorry, Joe.
Go ahead, bro.
John.
I'm in the defense contractor.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
So you're a government defense contractor?
Yes. Yep.
Cool. So you're a government employee?
Well, not officially government employee. I'm on so I work for Lockheed Martin. I'm a defense contractor.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah. So you're about as quiet about that as your hunting spots, right?
Yeah, I try to be.
Yeah. What do you
Got
do
to
for
keep
them?
that on the
brother?
DL, right?
What do you do for them?
I'm a program manager, so I
Okay.
just support, parts coming in, making sure they were on time, schedule, what we build there on site, and that we get it out, and get it to the
Gotcha.
customer. We support the Navy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So do y'all build parts for the Navy?
We do.
Machine parts and stuff like that?
Yeah.
That's cool. Awesome.
So I want you to know this guy's actually from where I was born, man. Yeah, he's a Virginia boy.
Oh,
Yeah, Virginia,
Virginia.
born and raised in
that's cool.
Manassas, Virginia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Ex-military background?
No.
No? Gotcha.
Born and raised, just a dad, a husband. I got a 8-year-old and a 6-year-old to keep me pretty busy, and I got a passion for the outdoors, and that's
Awesome. How long have you
That's
lived
all
in
you need to
Florida?
be in the woods. Passion.
exactly. So
How
I've
long
only
have you
been in
been in
Florida for about 3 months.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
What part?
we moved here literally right before I was making the trip to Colorado.
Oh, wow.
So it's been a whirlwind.
What part of Florida?
I'm in Central Florida, so I'm in Melbourne area.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm about 20 minutes from the beach. So
Cool.
it's not bad.
Are you from on the West Coast beach or the East
No,
Coast?
I'm on the east side.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
cool.
about 2 hours from Tampa and the Clearwater side, West
Okay.
Coast. Yeah.
Pretty stuff over there.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
And so tell us a little bit, you said you're born and raised there in Virginia. Okay. I was born in Norfolk, Virginia. And you've just recently made this move over to Florida, but tell us a little bit about your hunting background, man. I mean, a lot of people from East Coast, Midwest, all these guys, man, that don't even know what an elk is all the time, man. So how, what was that journey? I mean, you are an outdoors guy. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I got hooked into hunting a little later than most people. Like usually, your family hunts, you kind of grew up with it.
Oh, yeah.
I was probably 19, 20 before I first got in the woods. Just got hooked up with a buddy of mine who gave me a shotgun and said, "Hey, sit by this tree and see if you see any deer." Like I really didn't know what to do, what I was getting involved with. And I saw like an 8-point buck 15 yards from me. I did not move. I just was all shook up just looking at this thing, total buck fever. And I realized after that he was making, a licking branch and was making a scrape. But at the time I was just in awe of the sun was hitting the antlers. It was just a perfect scene.
Right.
And from then on, it's outdoors hunting and everything about it. I'm just in love with.
That's awesome.
And
brother.
that just kind of kept it. So whitetail, I'm a big bow hunter.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I got into was bow hunting. And ever since it's been what I've been doing. Turkeys.
Oh yeah.
Anything that we can get out there and hunt, I want to get out there and do it.
That's awesome, man. So you've been out west here. You've been to Colorado or Wyoming and all these places, what, 4 or 5 times?
Yeah. So I wish, just from going out there this year, never been out west, never seen an elk in person, never heard a bugle until this year. So everything was all new to me. And I think probably a lot of the guys that are probably listening, there's a lot of us that haven't been out west, but we see it on TV, we see you guys and it's just like, hey,
make it look easy, huh?
Well, it's just like, why can't I do that?
No doubt.
that looks like beautiful country. Let's make that happen. So that's kind of what we did this year is we just put a plan together and decided to go to out west.
So when did that bug get into you guys, man? And when you say us, tell us about your group. How many of you are?
Yeah, I got 2 other guys. One shout out, I got Richard Bowen and Josh Profit, both guys that I grew up with. That just really this all started I read a couple books. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I told myself this year in 2021, I was going to put down the smartphone more and start reading books. And I picked up 2 books. One of them spoke to, you need to have an adventure in your life. As men, we need to go do more. We need to get out. We need to go explore. And it was more based like a faith-based book. And the other one was just speaking to the sovereignty of men. And if you're going to say you're going to do something, you got to do it. And if you can't commit to something, don't commit to it. And I had for years told my buddy, hey, we're going to go out west. I'm going to plan a trip. We're going to make it happen. And years went by and I didn't act on it. I didn't even do any planning. And once I got done with those books, I'm like, this is it. I got to do it and I'm going to make it happen. So I planned it. I connected with them. I got the dates lined up and away we went. And they were
How old
on
are you,
board.
brother?
And we're going to get into that story, man. We're going to talk about that story here in a little bit. It's exciting, for people to find out, was there success? Did it fail? Was there successes along the way? What was the journey like? Because there's a lot of people out there, John, that, they're like, man, where do I start? What do I do? And we're talking about, and I want everybody to understand here, man, this fella has never been out west, has never seen an elk, never heard an elk, never stepped in the mountains. I mean,
Different.
Yeah.
That's a
It's
tall
different.
order.
How old are you, John?
I'm 38.
38. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. About the time I started elk hunting when I was 40.
Oh, right.
If you go back several episodes, like in our infancy, we kind of tell our stories and stuff like that when we, episode 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll hear, I started elk hunting when I was 40 years old as a birthday present from my wife. And I've always wanted to do it. I'm a big bow hunter too. We if it wiggles down here, we shoot it with a bow. So, like I said, and I'd never been out west either. And was I ever in for it?
So, Manano, when was your first time to ever be in the Rocky Mountains? Do you remember?
2016 when
So
we were there.
That was your first time ever as well?
Yeah,
Ever.
yeah. Ever.
Huh?
Well, I was riding dirt bikes at one time on the Rocky, but not hunting.
Yeah. Yeah. So but as far as you getting up there and when was your first time ever seeing an elk?
The one that you kill.
The day you kill that one.
Oh man, that's crazy, man. And we forget that sometimes. We've all been together so much. Cole, what about you, man?
The first time I ever went into the mountains was probably snow skiing whenever I was a little kid. But then whenever the first time I ever saw an elk, I actually called it in using like a Terminator bugle for this guy that I went hunting with. He had it and I was like, give me that thing. And then this bull came in and I was shocked.
How old were you?
How old were you then?
I was 28 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. 37 now.
Yeah, man. So, man, time flies. So, John, I want to thank you for being here, and for all of our listeners, what the goal of this is going to be is this is going to be our stories from the season. We're going to get a chance to talk with some of our grinders, and we're going to hear your story, and we want to find out all of those things that people might have questions in their mind. And I can tell you this, before we get going, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to listen to some of this and go, what was he thinking, man? and I love that part, because I want everybody out there to do what you were talking about. What was he thinking? He was thinking it was time to go and try. And in doing that, you took some steps to get there, and we're going to get all into that. And we're excited about that when we get into the content. So man, you're going to hear us and relax with us, because we're going to have a good time with you, but we're real excited about having you, man. So thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah. It's the first time for us to do this, John. So, we're pretty good off from the hip. We've been doing this a little while, so we'll lead you into a few things. These guys are real professional, and they're not going to ask you anything too pertinent or too personal. And they sure is not
before we went on the air.
We're sure not going to do anything that'll embarrass you. Yeah, right.
Yeah, no worries.
Anyway, Joe, I wanted to know one thing from you is, how did you pick John?
Well, we have a whole bunch of grinder stories out there.
Yeah.
But I could not get out of my head, no matter what happened on his hunt, I couldn't get out of my head when I asked him, and he said, nope, never been out west, never ever saw an elk, never heard an elk. And when I heard those three things, to me, that there are so many people out there in that exact situation that either saw it in a magazine, saw it on YouTube, saw it someplace, but they have no clue. And we always talk about how when guys get out here and actually get boots on the ground, how intimidating, how daunting, and, because you just do not know how big the country is. Especially, when you come from someplace like, and I got to quantify this, when you come from like the Carolinas or you come from Virginia with all those thick trees, well, you can live in a neighborhood and you see your neighbor and stuff, but you don't really see everything around you because there's so many trees. It's almost like there could be 5,000 people there and you'd think there was only 20, right? Because of all the trees there sometimes. And then you get out here in the West and you can see forever. Wow. And there's nobody out there, but in a lot of these areas, there's no houses, or, you could literally walk for a day before you hit something some places, So that part of it really intrigued me. Plus he was from Virginia, had gone to Florida. So this is a guy all the way from the East Coast out here. And I thought it was a great way to kick this off, man.
Yeah. And parallels too. Look, we're all elk hunters and have been for quite a while. But we'd never done like you. We'd never done an OTC in Colorado. So, we all banded together and, had to do our due diligence scouting. And even when we got there, we had to do scouting. And it was tough. So we know where you're coming from, Brother John. It was tough on us because we hunt country that Joe and Chav have been on their whole lives. So they absolutely understand the country and the elements and the way that the animals act in those areas. So, it was all new to us. Whereas Mr. Cole, he does it all the time. It's no big deal. He rock and rolls wherever he's got to go. So really wasn't no big deal for him, So we all learned a whole lot from that trip as well. And I can't wait to learn about some of the things that you encountered.
But the main point that I want to get across, Gilbert, is in what you just said, how people have been in certain places. If you know elk, you can go hunt elk. Absolutely. Anyway, if you know elk, man. So I think that's going to be a theme that's going to go through. Let's so we can get to that content. Let's take it forward, man.
You bet you guys, you know what time it is. It's time for the ElkBros shout outs. If you're new to our show, this is just a shout out to a few cities with the most listeners topping our charts this week.
Okay, this city, a suburb of Minneapolis, was the landing point for Irish and Scottish immigrants. During World War II, it was home to Camp Savage, a military intelligence school language program that taught Japanese to American soldiers. Sections of the city are part of the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge and Murphy-Henrihan Park Reserve. The city was named after an entrepreneur who trained racing horses, including Dan Patch, who broke the world pacing mile record in 1904. A record that remained unsurpassed for 54 years and brought notoriety to the city. And this is in Savage, Minnesota.
Savage, Minnesota.
That's awesome. Savage, Minnesota.
If there was any place I would want to have played football and been part of their high school, Savage, how can you go wrong with a town named Savage, man? That's just like, you're just beating that chest, man. I love that. I saw that name. I was like, you know what? We're going to have to do a shout out where we go through our list because, dudes, we're almost to 9,000 cities right now of listeners. And go through that and just pick what we think are some of the coolest names out there, man, because there's so many elk this and arrow that. And there's just so many cool names out there. And that's one of them right there.
This next top listening city is part of the DFW Metroplex. That's Dallas, Fort Worth, for you people that don't know. And is nicknamed the unique dining capital of Texas because of its eclectic restaurant choices. It's also the home of professional golfer Byron Nelson. And the infamous 1930s bank robbers Bonnie and Clyde.
Wow.
It's also the home of three major food chain distribution centers, the Tom Thumb Food and Pharmacy and the United Supermarkets and Martin Brower Markets. named in 1882 by a railroad surveyor in memory of his hometown of Virginia in Roanoke, Texas.
Roanoke,
Roanoke.
Texas.
I used to ride dirtbikes there.
You're in Roanoke?
Yeah, there's a
Ooh.
big park, dirt bikes and stuff, and ATVs, and it's
Oh, and
close
I was just
by.
going to say that there's a Roanoke, Virginia, man. I mean, we have that
Yeah.
back home, man. So that's pretty cool there. But Gilbert, what
Yes,
the
sir.
heck is eclectic, man?
Eclectic is like unique, right? And it's you know, eclectic is kind of on that cutting edge of not throwback, but not pop. You know what I mean? Not new age stuff.
Well,
it's
for the
it's
very
kinda
first time, I'm gonna
eclectic.
take this opportunity to correct you, guy.
Okay.
The first of many.
Here we
I
go.
won't miss you for a world.
Get it, Manana.
Eclectic, an eclectic opinion is when you take
Oh no, no, no.
Jobbers,
Now it's totally different.
Betos,
That's yeah.
or Coles, and then you mix it, and then you give an eclectic opinion, which is a little bit of everything.
So
Yeah, it's a little bit of
eclectic
everything.
restaurants is like a mix of different types of things.
It is.
Yeah.
It's-
Gilbert, I got you, baby.
No. It's actually, a broad, diverse scope
Yeah, there
of
you go.
things. Right?
Diverse.
It's
Yeah,
broad and diverse.
Beto, I
Oh.
couldn't miss it. You killed us with the trenas and stuff.
Hey,
What was the word?
Tranas.
Trenas.
Tranas is a real
Yes.
word.
This is big go.
Eclectic is like, a blend of things.
Yeah.
Diverse hit it. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
diverse hit it,
Okay.
yeah.
It's like we're a very eclectic group here,
Yeah.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Very.
All
Yes.
right.
This is an eclectic group. 100%.
Distinguished and eclectic, man.
I like
that.
I just-
Yeah, we got Luis here.
Manano, up next, brother.
Yeah,
Lay
we
it
got
on us.
Luis. This city is located in one of the few east-west valleys in the world, in the Topa Mountains. Its early sunrises bathe the valley in the sunshine, and the late sunsets create the famous pink moments, painting the surrounding peaks in rosy hues. Well, I don't know how to pronounce that.
you got it right. Yeah,
You
you're
got
right.
it perfect.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
All
It
good, bro.
borders Los Padres National Forest and nearby Lake Casitas. It's a popular recreational area. This is the home of numerous celebrities, including Tom Selleck, Anthony Hopkins, Gary Sinise, Julie Christie, and Britney Spears. The name is a Chumash Indian term meaning the nest. And this is not other than Ojai, California.
Oh, hi,
Ojai,
California.
Oh,
California.
hi.
California in the house tonight. You know-
SoCal.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, a shout out to our brother from Cali, man. He got him a deer, man. He scored his deer. The guy just got his deer,
Absolutely.
man. Yeah. I saw him teasing everybody with blood on his hand.
Yeah, man. He sends these posts, dude. Just got blood on his hands. I'm like, bummer. That's what I said. I'm like, come on, bro.
Jeff,
I'm gonna check that out with their sunsets. Take my wife to go see the sunsets over there in Ojai, California.
Beautiful.
You know,
and-
what
and-
what's interesting about that is
Ventura
they
County.
talk about the pink moment, and it's Los Padres and it's Las Casitas and
Mhm.
all of that, and that same pink moment happens here in New Mexico on the mountains of Albuquerque. That's why they're named the Sandias, because it has that
Gotcha.
sandia color.
Sandia color.
Yeah, and up
Okay,
here,
and what
and up here at Angel Fire
hues
too.
mean?
Absolutely, because of the
Jeff.
vibrant red skies that come across there. Yeah.
Where did you find that word, Jeff?
Which one was that?
Hues or
Oh,
Yeah,
hues.
hues.
It's
Yeah,
just
a
a
color
shade.
shade. Mhm.
A
Yeah,
shade.
a hue is
A
a
hue
tint.
is a different shade of
Yeah.
a color,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
a blue hue or a gray hue.
you could have shade.
but
Yeah.
it's not a shade. A shade is
But
when
that's
you have
not
black and white,
eclectic.
man.
And
Look,
that's
I'm
not
gonna give you an
eclectic
art
in-
lesson
in-
right now.
yeah, that's
See,
not an
dark.
eclectic adjective. You know, what I
An
mean?
eclectic.
Eclectic. There you go. I got you.
John, you don't know what you're in for, man. Right here,
Man, I like it already.
man. Cole.
Well, this next city is a suburb of St. Louis and was established in 1837 and named after John Ball, who settled the town site in 1804. Named one of America's best places to live by Money Magazine in 2005, 11, and 2013. It was also named Most Educated City in 2020 and the safest city in Missouri in 2020. It was also named Tree City, USA for the 30th consecutive year by the National Arbor Foundation in honor of the city's commitment to effective urban forest management.
Wow.
And that's in Baldwin, Missouri.
Baldwin, Missouri.
Baldwin, Missouri, just west of St. Louis.
That's crazy.
Baldwin's been tearing it up 30 consecutive years, man.
Wow.
Doing that. And
Somebody
wow.
better step their game in the tree business.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And hey, man, we love having all you Missouri. It's in Missouri and Missouri, both sides of you.
Yeah. The
There's a-
uhs and the e's.
There- Bunch of boys up there killing whitetail right now. The rut's just kicking off for them.
Yeah, buddy.
There we go, man. And before I do my shout out, man, John, would you like to give a shout out, bud? You're a guest.
I didn't have anything prepared like these fellas did.
No.
This is an uncharted
Neither did we.
podcast.
Oh, it sounded like
Go
y'all
on
were reading.
leash. Go on leash.
Yeah. Yeah. We're reading, man. No, I'm telling you, and we have difficulty doing that.
Yeah.
As you can see,
Manassas, Virginia.
Yeah.
Manassas, Virginia in the house.
Anything special about Manassas?
That's where I was born and raised. That's where
Yeah,
my
there we
family's from. It's
go.
pretty. No,
There
I,
we go.
Anything bullish about
yeah,
Manassas?
I'm trying to think. I mean, well, we got, the Civil War. We have the battlefield that's right there.
Oh, cool.
Bull
Major
Run?
battlefield right there in Manassas. So pretty historic area.
And John Lane was born there. There is a sign
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Probably.
It's just like going through
Probably.
Tupelo, Mississippi with Elvis, man. There's a sign that says, Elvis was born right here.
I bet there's a lot of metal detectors up there where you're from in Manassas, Virginia.
Oh yeah. It's apparently illegal in that area, but
Oh, really?
oh yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't that the Battle of Bull Run? Or am I getting
Yeah.
my history mixed up?
Yeah, Battle
Bull
Bull
Run.
Run. There's a
Just-
few
just
different.
north of
They do a
Buckeye.
reenactment like every couple years there. It's pretty
Mhm.
Oh,
cool
cool.
to check out.
That's awesome, man. Chad's spitting it out, man.
Yeah.
So last but not least, this city is located along the, oh my gosh. It's located along a river 45 miles south of Columbus. It's located at the center of the Hopa Indian Nation. This Amerindian culture had trade routes extending to the Rocky Mountains. They built earthen mounds for ceremony and burial purposes throughout this river and the Ohio River.
Scioto.
How do you think you say that?
Scioto.
Scioto.
Scioto. Okay. All right. Scioto and Ohio rivers.
Scioto.
In time, it became a Shawnee stronghold. The name comes from the Shawnee word Chalakala, meaning principal town, the center of the Shawnee Nation. Hey, it's not
Chaff.
Spanish.
Please.
It's not Spanish, bro. Rich in Native American history, it hosts the annual feast of the Flowering Moon Festival, drawing crowds in excess of not 1,000, not even 10,000, y'all. This festival brings in 85,000 people.
Wow.
The Chillicothe, Ohio, in the house.
Chillicothe, Ohio.
Nice.
Wow.
That's
Chaff,
awesome.
you gotta quit doing those shout outs like that,
Yeah.
please.
I think in Ohio they say it Chillicothe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a little bit
Chillicothe?
different because there's a Chillicothe in Texas, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and in Ohio, I'm sure it's pronounced a little bit different.
Might be.
And we have a Chili Verde in New Mexico.
Yeah, they think's hot.
Yeah, it is.
All right, man. It's time to turn that from our attention. We're gonna have a little talk with John here. And John, we're gonna let you start out where the idea hatched, what it took with you and your partners in crime, what the process was. And I just want you to tell us your story. And then we'll kind of talk more about the things. We might actually go in and ask you a few things as we're doing it, but you just tell us, because this was one heck of an adventure. I mean, you did
Sure.
have an adventure of a lifetime, right?
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
So what
I-
state did you finally decide to go into?
Colorado.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Any-
simply
any,
from the OTC over the counter just seemed like hey, that was the easiest.
Did you go like eeny, meeny, miny, mo, throw a dart, and that's where we go?
No, I mean, we
no.
did, I watched a lot of the podcasts here. I consumed a lot of information, online from different, hunting websites and things, and did a lot of e-scouting on Onyx, north facing slopes, dark timber, just we narrowed it down to a certain area we wanted to hunt. And then from there, just kind of put some pins down. Never had boots on ground until we literally were driving up there. So yeah, there's a lot of faith. Just
what time of the year did you go?
We went for archery. So we were then September 19th through the 26th.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was a short time. And I kind of planned the 19th on the muzzleloader season had ended. So I just felt like, okay, everything I've heard about was just, there's so many people, so many hunters, just wanted to try to change it up, because when we get out of the truck, we wanted to have an understanding, okay, are these hunters probably archery hunters, or is it muzzleloader hunters too, if we went a little bit earlier in the season? And with our first time, it just made sense to say, hey, we're just going to go right after muzzleloader ends. Didn't really have, the goal was to see an elk and hear a bugle. That's what I wanted to accomplish out of this trip.
What made you want to go that late in the archery season and not be there September 1?
Yeah, I think it ended just being logistics. I had two other guys that I was going with. All of us have families. One had birthday parties, and quite frankly, we didn't even think he was going to make it. He had neck surgery 6 months before we flew to Colorado.
Oh, wow.
So
y'all flew, y'all didn't drive.
Yeah, so we ended up deciding, because this was our first time going out, and all three of us were coming from different states. I had a Maryland, Virginia, and now me in Florida. The logistics of that just seemed like we weren't really expecting a lot. First time, never done it, and just felt like, let's do the first time. Let's just fly out there, and then ended up flying home. So
did y'all rent a car, or did y'all rent a truck, or?
Yeah, so we ended up renting a car when we got there, which ended up being a Jeep Wrangler.
Oh, okay.
So anybody out there that watches the TV shows and thinking you got to have a big rig and you got to have all the nice things, we went there with a Jeep Wrangler, rented it, and went right into public ground and had an adventure. So I don't think you got to have a lot to make it happen.
Did you fly into Denver?
Yeah, we flew into Denver and then drove a good amount to get to where we wanted to be.
Is that airport not a trip? It's like out in the middle of nowhere.
It is.
Like,
it was wild.
You fly in that airport and you go, where are the mountains at? I mean, you're like,
that's exactly what
desert, man. Y'all went the wrong way.
That's
y'all
exactly what I
LA
thought when we landed. I was like, what is going on? I got Virginia that had bigger mountains. Hell, Florida's getting close to that.
Yeah. I'm like, first time I ever flew into Denver airport, I'm like, I looked around, I'm like, we went the wrong way, fellas. This ain't dadgum Denver.
But it didn't take long before, and I know y'all have said it on the podcast before, the sticker shock set in when we got a little bit further in.
Yeah.
And I'm like looking at my buddy with some of his pins and we're like, what are we talking about? Where are we going? Like, it definitely got real when we pulled out up into the Jeep and got out of the truck.
So I'm going to stop you and back you up for a second, because as you go, so you guys decide you're going to go on this adventure. How did you know where to even start, dude? I heard you say that you listened to some things, you went online. What were some of your resources, some things that you guys used out there to get this going?
So I ended up having a subscription to the Go Hunt website. If you guys are familiar with that, it kind of breaks down the units and gives you some of the percentages of, success rates, and take it for what you will, how accurate some of those were. But generally that was the basis for it, just to get an understanding, and also looking at the pictures of certain units, because for me, being new to all of it, I wanted, like I said, an adventure, and I wanted to feel like we were in Colorado. Like I wanted that whole, it ended up pushing us a little south. So Denver, it was like a 3.5, 4 hour drive down south to where we ended up hunting. So that was a resource. I was a member of some of the Facebook groups. So like the Colorado There's a backcountry hunters, there's a
Right.
Colorado elk hunters.
Mhm.
All those were really valuable resources for somebody who's never done it before, because you can ask questions and they're going to be pretty brutally honest with the answers.
Mhm.
I found out.
Yeah, Jermaine Hodge is a member of that as well. He's a great resource. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and we got a lot of great feedback, and it was just general information, just trying to get a gauge of like what to expect. Another big resources that I utilized was muzzleloader hunters. I actually got an opportunity to kind of network with some of the muzzleloader hunters that were actually going to be in the unit we were hunting, but they were there the week before us.
Right.
So, not asking for pens or any of that, but just general, hey, what did you guys see? Were you
Mhm.
hearing any? Was there water? Like just general things that for me being new, I thought it was very valuable to get. And these guys were really great to share just some information that kind of helped us kind of push us a little bit in a different direction that when we were originally going to, not too far, but helped us get a little bit more focused on where we wanted to be. So I thought that was a great resource, and I would suggest anybody who's going out there that's new to the whole game to kind of get on there and ask some questions. I mean, I was asking questions on tent setup. I was going to go floorless tent. I was cutting weight as much as possible, and I got a lot of feedback. There's like, you may not want to go with a floorless shelter. In Colorado, the winds, the rain,
Yeah.
you're going to get wet if it comes underneath your tent. And, it was valuable because I ended up changing that setup, and we did get a little light rain, not much, but I think it just helped. So I thought it was valuable to ask those type of questions, and you're going to get answers,
Yeah.
So you guys were hunting with camp on your back.
Yeah, we were strictly backcountry, backpack, frame pack hunters. Food and water was with us, and we were just planning to get out of the Jeep and go hunting and not come back to the truck until we killed one, we ran out of water, or we decided, hey, we're not seeing any sign. Let's go do something different somewhere else. So.
And did you have any, when you guys flying there, I mean, you had to put your bows in cases, you probably checked your packs already ready to go, that type of thing?
Yeah, so for that, we had a few more logistics that the person who was driving out there would have to go through. You can't take fuel. So we had to pick up fuel. So I had a couple, like an REI and a Walmart that were marked right there by Denver airport that we could go hit and get the fuel. We did pretty much pack our packs, but we found out, the airport will go through some of the packs and rearrange things and open stuff up. So when we ended up getting to camp, it wasn't exactly how we wanted it to be from going out of the truck. So it slowed our process up the next morning before we were able to kind of get it and go. But there was a few things that did help us from a flight perspective. And I think a lot of people probably that are listening are probably going to drive. I know that's probably the biggest, it's the easier way to go about it is to drive. And maybe hindsight, next time we may do that is maybe drive and meet somewhere, because you like to have your rig, you like to have your truck and extra things.
Right.
You're in the middle of nowhere in some of those places, and to have a
For
Jeep
real.
Wrangler, you think about having a chainsaw or chains for snow tires, like those type of things. We took some risks with doing the flying and not having some of those things available.
Did you find, because of where you're coming from there in Florida, that maybe the cost was probably similar, right? As if y'all would have drove compared to the flying and having to rent a car?
Yep. Yeah, especially because we weren't all three in the same state. So if we were in the same state, three of us throw in a truck, let's go, we'll all split it three ways. But for the fact that we were going to be potentially driving different cars, or I'd have to meet up with them somewhere, and then we cut left to Colorado, it just didn't seem plausible with three guys in three different states.
Yeah.
I know the flights were
myself,
reasonable.
Yeah, I know for myself, there's no way my gear and three other guys' gear would fit in my truck. I travel way too heavy. So, I mean, I can travel in my truck, but three guys' gear ain't no way.
Yeah, and we were pretty conscious about this, because we knew we were going to have everything on our backs, that
Mhm.
the weight was a big deal. I mean, you know, I mean, it just is what it is. Like
Yeah.
I think my pack weighed 43 pounds.
Yeah. And when you check
Oh.
it, if it's over 50, they're going to charge you for two.
Yeah,
Dude,
exactly.
you
Well,
got to
that was the
grab a hold
reason-
of Cole's pack though, dude, man. I think Cole carries a dead body with him.
No doubt.
Possible.
Max, yeah, we could build a house with this stuff I got in my pack. I got saws, you name it.
Yeah.
It's too
Yeah, and
much.
that's great because when we talked to some of the guys, some archery hunters before on the Colorado page, they were like 65 pounds in their pack, and they were giving me a lot of feedback before we went. That was like, "Hey, I brought like 2 jackets. I didn't need 2 jackets," or you know, they
Why?
were kind of giving me some
They
things.
did
that-
last year.
Wow.
yeah, the weather
8
was
inches of snow.
yeah.
So did you haul the water in, or did you have a water purifier system of some kind?
Both. So I
Both.
literally had probably a 3-liter bladder, because everything we had gathered from information and intel from maps showed that there was a good amount of water where we were going to be at. But me, I drink a lot of water. I just wanted to be safe with 3 liters in the bladder. We had the water purifiers, all of us did, extra bladders with us. But honestly, we found out we didn't have much water where we were. And that it was one of those things from a lessons learned. We should have brought more water with us.
Oh, yeah.
Bottled
we-
water.
Yeah, like gallon jugs of water. We should have brought more. It definitely could have been a problem if we would have been there a little longer. We ended up at one point getting in the Jeep, going to a stream that we had passed, and filling up a bunch of water jugs, purifying a bunch of water, and then bringing it back with us.
So that was
Um,
my question. Were you guys like hunting out during the day and coming back to the Jeep, or were you staying out overnight? And yeah.
Yeah, so we got in at night, that first night on the 19th.
So it was
and
dark when you got there.
It wasn't actually dark. It was probably like 7-ish when we got
Okay.
there. So it was getting dark.
Getting close. Yeah.
And we saw probably 2 or 3 camps driving to where we ended up parking.
Right.
But they, you know, so we passed a few, and my whole mindset the whole time was, we're going to run into a bunch of hunters. You can't let that get us down. It's going to happen. It's Colorado. You're going to see them. But I was actually surprised in exactly where we were that we didn't see more hunters. So that was interesting. When we did pull into the parking where we ended up setting up, there was a side-by-side there. And we ended up talking to the gentleman. He came out at night, and he had a bow, but he had like a backpack on. So he was just kind of going in, like, I don't know, 200-300 yards, just setting up for the evening and coming back out. Very nice guy from Pennsylvania. Family hunts there every year, or in that general area. But they were going to move camp, is what he mentioned to us that night. So he left, and that next morning, we ended up going in.
Now, when you hear somebody says we're moving camp and you've just parked there, how did that play with the head?
It didn't really, and
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Because
Good
just
job.
because of the
Yeah.
fact of how he was hunting,
Yeah.
it was a different style than what we were doing, and I felt like we were going to go in a lot further than what he did, just because I could see what he had on his pack. That he was just going in
Day
just for that evening sit, and which is by all means a good way to hunt. It just I thought our style was going to lend itself to, we may have more
He
success.
ain't never
and be able
hunted
to
with
see-
Joe Gillian in a hunt like that, because you go 5 miles and turn around and walk 5 miles back in an evening.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, and the gentleman, when he was walking out, said, "Hey, did you guys bugle over here?" And we said, "No." He said, "Oh, there must have been. That was an elk then." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well,
That was an elk.
thanks. That sounds good." That's what you want to hear when you're pulling into a spot.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man.
Damn right.
So that evening, though, when we were, probably about 9-10 o'clock, they started going off, and we had
Oh, really? You
had-
could hear them bugling.
we had
man.
2 or 3 bugling, which I thought was 300-400 yards, but I never heard one before, so it could have been 4 miles away.
Wasn't 4 miles, I promise you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
If you
generally
hearing
that
them
type
there
of country,
within a quarter mile. of them.
it was hard for me to kind of, being new at it, I didn't really have an idea how close they
Right.
were.
And
Absolutely.
that's big country too. So like
Yeah.
you can be I know for a fact, we were within a couple, 200 or 300 yards from an elk and it bugling. It sounded like he's 5 miles away, but he wasn't but 200 or 300 yards,
And I think that's probably what the case was, but it just, at that time, it just seemed like, oh, they're probably further away, but
At what
awesome.
point, John, did you guys just like stop and just friggin' look around and go, wow?
that was it. I mean, when we
Yeah.
heard those elk, we just kind of looked at each other like, well, my checklist was to see an elk and hear a bugle. And
Right?
we literally got out of the
Check.
truck and within 3 hours we hear a bugle. And I'm like, all right,
Check.
this is cool. Yeah, check that one off.
Yeah, when
You know,
they're
I know.
serenading you to sleep, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
It
and it was
sucks
pretty
because
much
you
the
are
whole
not
night.
sleeping. Did you sleep at all that night?
No, not really.
Yeah,
No, I mean,
That's
none of us did.
awesome.
I don't think, because I wanted to just keep hearing them to see like, okay, they're here. Okay, are they here? I was just trying to keep moving with where we could, we kept marking where we thought they were going.
Mhm.
I don't know if that was a good strategy in the evening, but we did it. And I just felt like in the morning, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, we heard the last bugle. So it was like pretty much all night we heard something.
Mhm.
So we were pumped the next day, obviously ready to go.
And what elevation did you guys start out at?
So I
Coming-
think,
Coming from
yeah,
back.
I'm going to say the truck was probably at 10 something, 10.5, 10.8, something like that. I mean, we went up as high as we could with this Jeep Wrangler until the road ended.
Yeah. Did y'all kind of camp out there, or did y'all give it some time to kind of acclimate, or did y'all just kind of dive right in?
Yeah, so that night we just camped there, but there was really no acclimating. The next morning we were getting
brutal.
in and looking for sign. I will say though, I did some prep before we got there. I did get some altitude sickness meds, and you're supposed to take them a couple days before you get to altitude. So I did that. One of the other buddies had been out west before. So he's a snowboarder. He's has family that lives in Colorado that he saw every once in a while. So he said that's never been a problem for him. So he didn't have a problem. And my other buddy didn't take any pills, and he did have a little bit of just shortness of breath there for the first couple of days, but then he was fine.
Oh, good
Oh, it's
deal,
a
man.
real thing. It's flying into Denver, that helped because you're already at 5,000, it's Mile High City. You're already at
65.
54.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we
54
had
to
3
65.
4-hour drive in
Yeah,
the car.
helped a little bit. Mhm.
That's pretty good.
But 10,000 feet's a different animal.
So
we got
way
eventually
different.
we got up to 12.5. Just
way
throughout the
different
trip.
animal. Mhm.
Not truly hunting elk at that point, but
Yeah, hiking.
wanted to see some different country.
Mhm. Hell, y'all were above the tree line.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was up there. That's
Wow.
when it started. That's when it hit me. And when we got up to that, I literally just got my tent and I was like, I'm gonna take a break. It was 6:30 in the afternoon, in the evening, and I didn't wake up to the next morning. I was just, it was just too much for me at that point.
So y'all bivouacked out the whole time. Y'all didn't come back to your base where the Jeep was. Y'all stayed out.
We did when it was time to pack out.
Gotcha.
all right, so it's the next morning, man. You've been listening to them all night. Go from there.
Yeah, so we're getting everything. You can imagine 3 guys in a Jeep Wrangler with 3 frame packs, trying to get organized. We definitely were not hitting the woods at first light. It just took us a little longer to get going. But when we did, we dropped right in and we started seeing sign. But to me, old sign, right? So we just kind of kept just working.
What
until
made you think it was old sign, bud?
like old scat poop, dry,
Okay, dry,
you
hard.
could see
yeah.
the rubbing on the trees, but you could tell it wasn't fresh. You didn't see, which I'm used to whitetails. You see a lot of
All right.
that bark and right there
Sure.
at the bottom.
Yep.
You could see it was a little older.
Cool.
So we just kind of kept working through the timber. And, at this point, we ended up stopping at one point, probably about 10 o'clock, and just saying, hey, we pinned where we thought we heard them at 4 o'clock that morning. Let's just see if they come back or if they're going to work through this area. So we just ended up posting up for about an hour or two, had like breakfast there, and just kind of listened. Never ended up hearing an elk at that point, and just kind of decided just kind of pushing a little further. I mean, it was day one, so it's like, do you want to be aggressive, or do you want to just kind of limp along until we kind of get understanding where they may be at, right?
So you're saying push a little further. So when you're saying that, are you guys actually on a trail, on a
No.
forest trail? Are you bushwhacking? And is that further going up higher in altitude? Is it going into a mountain range? What, it kind of point that out a little bit.
All right. So on, it was not on trail. We were definitely off trail pretty much the whole trip.
Mhm.
Good. And it was more bushwhacking for sure. It was really thick where we were at. And we were pretty much staying at the same elevation line. And then at one point it kind of gradually dipped off, but we're
So about what elevation were you guys staying at?
so right at like 10.8, 10.6 is where we had parked the car and the Jeep, and we literally kind of stayed on that. There was kind of like a
ridge,
a big ridge top flat where we could kind of just keep working through. And that's ended up what we did for most of the morning. And then we
did
ended
you see
up,
any elk that morning?
we did not see any elk that morning. No,
Did you hear any more bugles that morning?
not the morning. Nope.
Gotcha.
No.
All right, let's rock.
Yeah. So we ended up hanging out, just taking it easy for a little bit. And then we kept pushing. And at this point, we're starting to kind of go off through the corner of the ridge and then work our way more left, kind of working our way back down a little bit. So we're starting to get a little bit lower elevation at this point. And it's probably midday at this point. You know, we weren't trying to go quick. We were trying to just kind of take our time, look for sign, and we're new. So I took a couple pictures of some elk beds because it was cool, because I've never seen one before.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's what you're going to do.
Hello.
I've never seen
elk beds. That's a good sign, brother.
Hey, Cole,
Yeah,
what was I
it was
doing when we were scouting, man? And we've been doing this, I've been doing it 40 years. What was I doing when we were scouting?
Rolling in elk bed.
Oh yeah. I mean, we were picking up stuff and taking video in the elk beds, and
Absolutely. Yeah. Dude, I don't care if you're just a starter or how long you've been doing it, that it doesn't get old.
Yeah.
well, dude, and that's putting the puzzle together, right? You guys are putting the puzzle together at your pace, right?
Yeah.
And the perfect way to go jumping into something where you just flew in the day before from the East Coast, you know, you're brand new there. There wasn't any reason to just go try to jump in and blow everything out, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Do you try to stay close to the water source or food or dark timber?
Well,
There was any kind of pattern you were trying to follow, or?
Yeah, so we hadn't really found the water yet. We had so many pins on where we saw, you could see creeks in the topo, and you could see the maps on Onyx that showed creeks. So we pinned everything, but we just hadn't worked our way through that at that point.
It's a big country. It's hard to get to.
Yeah, and I guess in all those areas where I said the elk bed and the rubs and things, we're stopping to put a waypoint on everything.
Yeah.
I mean, we waypointed everything. You could just see what's a whole line of elk scat. Like if you looked at my Onyx, it just was red mark after red mark, and it just looked like a general elk trail. You know, they were using it at some point. It just wasn't at that time.
Yeah.
Right.
And I wanted to do that because being new, the thought process was, I want to come back. And if, this is where I'm just building, my portfolio.
It takes a lot of time to do all
doing.
that too. It takes a lot of time to do that. You're constantly working with your electronics, and it takes a lot of time, which is really playing into what you want, because going slow is really a good thing when you're archery hunting, man.
Oh, yeah.
And taking your time, because really the elk are coming to you at that point, and especially in the midday, because they're going to get up out of their beds and move around a little bit and stuff like that. So
Do you think?
bravo, man.
Do you think they were pushed by the early hunters? I mean, they were there. You picked a
You hear it.
really good area, so you saw many signs. So
Yeah,
they were
I think.
probably pushed.
Yeah, what we learned, I think later on in the trip, I think the muzzleloaders had a lot to do with where we ended up finding some elk. is what I believe. And I'd love to get your guys'
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
having done this a hell of a lot longer than me.
Yeah, no, that's good, brother.
Well, I'm trying to remember at that time what the moon was doing too.
We had a full moon
That's
on the
what I thought.
on the 20th.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's
So
why you were
we-
hearing,
we-
hearing them so
point, too.
good at night.
And that was that was one of those things, like that was the week we had. And that was one thing going into it from a mental spec. We're like, man, I don't know. That's not really the best week for us to
Oh,
be going.
don't worry
Right?
about the moon, bro.
We don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
Don't
That's
worry
a,
about
that's a
that
whitetail
stuff, dude.
mindset, I guess.
Yeah.
Big time, and I don't even worry about it then. They got to still do the same things. You know, they're all like, we say this 1,000 times if you listen to the podcast.
They're out
They're
there
slaves to
somewhere.
their bellies. Yeah, they're slaves to their bellies, and they're where they're at, right? You just got to find out where they're at, you know, and they're
You know,
slaves to their bellies. You
And
know?
I hear Manano, he's like, well, you know, you didn't hear him in that area where you heard him, but that's just part of it, man. I mean, when they're up all night in that moon,
Yeah,
you know, there's a
shut
point
up.
where they do go bed down, and a lot of times they're going to, you know, they're going to shut up for a while there. They've been screaming all night long. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so you're doing the right thing, dude. You're in the
Yeah.
area, you're seeing the sign, and you're enjoying the moment. You're doing the photo thing that everybody does. Keep going, man.
Yeah. So
and
at
let me
this
ask you
point-
one other thing while
yeah,
you're
go ahead,
moving
go.
through. Are you calling at all? Are y'all calling, or are y'all staying
At this
silent?
Good
point,
question.
no. Yeah, this
Okay.
was probably pushing 12 o'clock in the
Yeah,
afternoon.
no problem.
Did
And
you do anything in the morning?
no,
Okay,
Okay.
cool.
Cool.
All right.
no.
cool.
And again,
I
and I
think
know,
you're
Joe,
doing the
I t-
right thing personally. Good.
okay,
Awesome,
yeah,
brother.
Go ahead.
yeah. And then obviously this is our first
Yeah.
trip, right? But we're not callers, right? This elk calling thing is new. And the buddy of mine who ended up doing a lot of the practicing for calling, you know, and I know you guys probably went through this at one point, but you're a little self-conscious. You're like,
Oh.
okay, there's probably other hunters here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to sound like an idiot. And this is probably not the best thing to do.
Yeah.
So we
You
kinda
gotta
just-
hear me.
Bro,
You gotta hear me.
especially when you got
You're
so
calling
look,
without
these
your
two guys
diaphragm.
here on the left, bro, they're world champions, right? So yeah, do you get a little self-conscious? Sure, but I don't worry about it anymore, because at the end of the day, man, elk don't sound like everyday elk callers, right? They got
Yeah.
their own way to sound. And like you said, man, you get a little self-conscious, but you just got to keep doing it until you feel like that, man, well, I can make an elk sound, you know.
Right.
And sometimes it's not even good, but I've heard elk sound really bad. So don't worry about those kinds.
It's amazing because a lot of hunters feel like almost like they're on stage,
Yeah,
you know, when they're out there.
I did.
Am I going to make a sound and scare everything off? You know, and
Mhm.
and really, honestly, man, and I hope everybody's listening, is that, again, I always talk about your odds, right? Is if you don't make a sound, it doesn't matter if you scare them off sometimes,
Right.
because you're not going to bring them in either. You're just going to walk by them. If
Yeah.
you make a sound, well, let's say you scared some off, but you brought others in, you're actually creating at least an opportunity. And
That's
and like
right.
Gilbert said, man, elk, the worst callers I've ever heard were elk. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I said I had that happen the day before the last day this year. I didn't believe it was elk.
yeah, yeah.
All right,
Hey,
John.
you know, we live by Joe's motto. If you hear a bugle, you got to go chase it. You got to go find it out. Find out, no matter how bad it sounds, no matter how good it sounds, you got to go check.
Yeah.
Right. So he always, you know, you're going to know once you get in there and you start doing what we do, those hunters, if there is a hunter bugling, he's coming right at you, because he's going to think there's a herd of elk coming his way. So
I want to hear
mean, it
more of
won't
this
take him.
story,
Yeah,
dude.
for
Come
sure.
on, John.
Yeah. So at this point, it's probably midday. My two buddies, Josh and Richard, they took a little break. You know, they're just hanging out for a bit. And I decided, because I had marked a creek bottom down in this lower part of this timber, and it backed up to some private and some BML land back in there. And I was like, well, you know, it's not too far away. You guys are just going to hang out here. I'm going to go down there and check it out. Like, why not? Hindsight, probably not the best thing. Probably been best to bring my buddies with me. You know, you came together, let's go together, let's hunt together.
Mhm.
But I think they ended up probably taking a little nap, just hanging out. So I go down probably 400, 500 yards, maybe, but it's super thick. I mean, the aspen's super thick. It was tough to even get my pack through some of the stuff. And then it opened up a little bit, and I could see one side of this left side of this mountain. So I just sat there. I'm like glassing for a little bit, but it's the sun's beating down on that side. I thought to myself, what am I doing? Like, they're not going to be out there in the sun just getting beat down on. So I go down a little bit further, and I take myself a little break, and I'm just sitting there for a little bit, just looking around. The creeks I could see was going down, but it was all blown down timber. It looked gnarly. And I'm just sitting there and have a little snack, and I hear what I thought was a bugle. And I'm like telling myself, I don't know if that was one or not. Like, because it started to get pretty windy too. And then I'm just listening some more, and I hear another one, same area. I'm like, that's got to be an elk, right? But there's private land that's down that way. I'm like, it could be another hunter on private. I hear it again. It was pretty consistent. It was like one after another, like every couple of minutes I heard it. I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta go down there. So I started working through the thick stuff so I could get it to a little bit more open area so I could kind of hear better, because it was so thick and windy, the leaves and everything. It's very hard to kind of hear at distance. So I get through a little bit more opening, and I could hear it. I definitely knew it was elk.
And you knew
I
it was
still wasn't
closer.
convinced if it wasn't a hunter, because again, I knew, so I didn't really. Am I going to walk up on another hunter who sounds really good? To me, it was a bugle. I'm going to investigate it, right? I mean, I'm here to hunt.
Perfect.
We're going to do that.
Attaboy. Yeah.
But I do post up. I had a GPS, so I ended up with the Garmin InReach. So I ended up hitting up the buddies and say, hey guys, I think I hear elk down here. Here's where I'm at. Come meet me here.
Grinders tuning in, thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Podcast. Our goal is to share our knowledge and help you flatten that learning curve so that you too can have some of the very same incredible experiences that have given all of us here at ElkBros a lifetime of memories. If you like what you hear or see, you can get all of this information plus so much more from our Base Camp Elk Hunting Training Camp, the first in a series of online courses from our Blue Collar Elk Academy. Our Base Camp Training Camp allows me to use my coaching style and share almost 40 years of elk hunting experiences successfully hunting elk on public lands, as well as over 20 years guiding hunters of all ages and experience levels. This course will be like nothing you have ever experienced in concept and structure, using success-based coaching techniques that will elevate your confidence and skill sets. Our camp will prepare you specifically from that final moment most in your control, those final minutes or seconds the elk is in front of you, backwards through each step and level, allowing you to see, visualize, understand, and relate every coaching point to what lies ahead, the next step, the next thought process, the next success. Because y'all, you've already been there. You know what it looks like. By tapping my 30 years of teaching and coaching experience, our camps are developed considering multiple learning modes with text, visuals, audio, as well as video. And Base Camp will benefit those new to elk hunting all the way to the 10 to 15 year vet. So if you are looking for that one thing to help you fill that tag this year, invest in the most important piece of equipment there is, you and your elk hunting knowledge. You can find the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy and the Base Camp Training Camp at ElkBros.com. That's ElkBros.com. Keep dreaming of the screaming, believing in achieving, and most of all, keep grinding.
But I didn't have, the wind was really bad. From where the elk was, it was
That
down
was my
below
next
me.
question, yeah.
But the wind was at my back, and I knew he wasn't going to smell me because from my knowledge, he was below, down in this real thick bottom. But in order for me, I couldn't go right at him. I wanted to go straight down this real thick, gnarly country, basically, but a lot of down trees, and then get around and come back up with the wind in my face, and I'm going down at that point. So I'm trying to get lower to him on his level. But I'm not very patient. So I ended up telling the guys, meet me here.
Mhm.
But I still heard him bugling. And guys, when you hear an elk bugling for their first time, and you're in a country like Colorado, you're not going to want to wait on your buddies at all time before you decide,
Yeah, you're
hey,
just
I need to,
convoluting it. Yeah.
yeah, like I just need to get a little closer. So when they do meet up with me, I'm staying where I know where this guy's going to be, because if they show up and I can't hear him or I don't know where he's at, I mean, what's the point? So I'm multiple times through my trying to cut through this, I'm telling them I'm here. And then another waypoint, I'll tell them I'm here. So I'm literally just giving this path to where I want them to continue to follow me, because I'm continuing to kind of see if I can get around on this elk. Which I do. I ended up getting down, and it opened up to a little meadow where I could cut down and get back into the timber, and I had the wind in my face, which was perfect. And I ended up, what I thought, I told you guys earlier, I heard it like consistent bugles, right? I heard one,
Right.
then I heard another one. As I was moving back into the country to come back to where the elk were, it ended up being two elk. I could hear them kind of talking back and forth to each other. Like one was bugle and the other one bugle. So at this point, I was pretty confident it's not a hunter. There's two elk down there. At this point, my buddies finally get down. I say down. They were probably 400 yards above me, to where basically my first waypoint was. They hadn't really, since I kind of came down and went down in the bottom, they hadn't gotten close to that yet. And I hear them call. I hear my buddy call, and I could tell the difference. I love him, and he got way better as we got going. But that was the whole thing. I had to keep telling him the whole time, like, you got to have that confidence. Just do it. Who cares? Like,
There you go.
but I heard him call, and I'm like hitting him up. Like, I try to get him on the inReach. Like, why are you calling? Like, I'm telling you, I'm way down here. I got two elk down here. Y'all need to come up, meet with me, and let's see if we can put a game plan together, right? And then I hear a bugle above me, 400 yards, right where they're at. I'm like, what is going on?
They heard it too.
Yeah, they heard it too.
Yeah.
And so they're telling me, hey, I got a bull right here. You need to come to us. And at this point, I feel like I'm 300 yards close to the two elk that are right, what I believe are right here, and they're above me calling to another elk. So it got crazy. And this is one thing, I think the communication, you guys do this a lot with the group dynamic, right? When you guys are hunting together, you guys have a feel for who's doing what and when. We hadn't learned that yet. So our communication was off. And that's a lesson learned that we talked on the ride back home, how we can sync that up. And it's all me.
Sometimes, dude, look, sometimes it's elk hunting and things get crazy. You're down there where you think you have some bulls. They start calling, and which is something that you hadn't done, right? You hadn't called. So, the elk don't know to come into you where you're at. They let off a call and you think, well, he's not that great, my buddy, but keep working at it. But he has an elk respond to him and he has things going on, right?
Yeah. And I'll say when the walk that I was doing when I was trying to get the wind right, I did let out a couple cow calls on the diaphragm. I don't know how. I mean, I'm sure they were terrible, but I kept a couple of those going as I was walking through that thick timber.
Cool.
And I think at one point I definitely spooked an elk. I never saw it, but I could it's pretty hard not to tell how heavy those hooves hit the ground. And I don't know how I didn't see it, because it seemed like it was like 40 yards in front of me, as loud as it was, and I never saw it.
Well, so just so for our listeners though, here you're going down through thick stuff and you're obviously making noise, right? Guys, that's fine. That's good. You make a couple of cow calls. Elk think you're elk. Most likely, the animal that you spooked was coming into you. You're moving. They're looking, and probably caught you, and you might have blown that one out of there. But being noisy in the elk woods when you're making elk sounds is not a bad thing. It actually, I've brought animals. I've had a bull come into me scream because I was doing just that. So awesome, man. Keep rocking.
So I hear him calling, and I could tell at this point he's 400 yards above me. I have elk kind of below me, and it sounds like the elk he's calling to is coming to him. And my mindset was like, I'm going to get in the middle of them. Like,
there you go.
I mean,
Yeah.
the wind was right for where
The
I was
perfect
at.
storm.
I'm just, I mean, let's just see how this works. So I push
Got
up.
in the middle of a rut fest, buddy.
I push up. Yeah, Gilbert, I pushed up further into him. And at this, I'm not bugling. I'll be fully transparent. That's not in my skill set at this point.
But you did the best thing you could do. Strong suit for you, ninja. Go
Yeah.
straight deer hunt mode. Get in there, Mohican sneaking, man. You can hear them. You can get to them, you know.
So I scoot up and I wait to see what's going to play out. If this one above is going to work down to where these other two are, and they're all going to have a party, and we'll have it together. What ended up happening is they got this elk, the bull, to come in within 20 yards of them. And they ended up getting video of them. Keep in mind, I am the only one with the tag. These two gentlemen
Oh, we didn't know
along for
this.
the ride.
We didn't know this. Hold
time
on.
out.
Hold on. Hold on, man.
Saving that.
So
Wow.
you wait a second now. You got buddies without a guy with the tag, and they're up there calling the elk into them, and they don't have a tag.
Yeah, so he was hitting me up on the communication, and he's like, I just can't get a hold of this guy. So he told Richard, he's like, this elk's right here. Richard, me and you are going to see an elk on this trip. I'm calling him in. That's what he tells him.
Okay, time out. Do they have a bow with them or anything?
No tags, no bow.
No bow.
And this is what
Wow.
good friends are,
Dude,
because they came on this trip just for me, right?
Support
Oh,
But they
man.
wanted to see an elk
Straight
too.
up.
So,
Straight up brothers right there.
oh yeah, ride or die. So, but again,
No
they're
doubt.
calling an elk when I'm down below waiting for them to come to me. So
Yeah, that ain't cool,
we
man.
can talk about that later.
Yeah.
And they're getting
the bro
video. They're
code.
like, "Oh man,
Yeah,
would Todd
we
love
got
to
a
see
great video,
this."
20
got
yards.
a party going on
Oh, yeah.
right here.
Broadside, 20 yards. And we come to find out, because he ended up showing the video to some of the locals in town.
Wow.
They were like, oh, yeah, that's a 300-inch bull. That's an awesome bull for Colorado.
A little more salt in the wound.
Yeah, it's like, all right.
Dude, I did that to Kyle one time. I lost Kyle in the middle of a call in, and I still had that bull going that Kyle was going after, but there was another one. I was like, well, I got to see this bull. So I went ahead and called him up and got video of him and all that the same way. And I had filled my tag.
Oh, wow. And that's what he wanted to do. And they got a great view, both of them. So they got their fix in right there.
Sweet.
So after that happened,
How far away did they get to the bull?
20
they were 20 yards. Broadside.
20 yards.
20
wow.
yards?
20 yards. He got a good video. Joe,
Straight.
he took a couple screenshot pictures. I'll send them to you, Joe. I mean, it's a nice looking bull. That bull runs off. They finally get to where I'm at. And at this point, they're both stoked, super excited. One's Josh, my buddy's really pumped because he was able to call in his first elk, never bugled before until that trip. So he's pumped. But they're telling me, I saw a 300-inch bull. This was so awesome. And I'm like, guys, I have 2 elk down here still. We can make this happen. Like, let's calm down. Let's figure this out. And I probably said it with a little more choice words at that point. It's like, let's get something happening here, fellas.
Yeah. Help the guy out that's got the tag. How about it?
Yeah,
Are you saying you went unleashed, man?
I might have went a little unleashed
Oh,
on
I
that.
don't blame you. I guarantee you. I'd have let it fly.
But the communication back and forth, and it was on me, because when I said I'm here, I should have waited for them to catch up with me. But
Yeah.
again, so we're together at this point. We know there's elk below us, or not below us. I'd say below us, probably, I don't know, 100 yards below us. I mean, not far, but they were 300 yards what I heard 300 yards. It could have been 100 yards, Gilbert, like you were saying.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Because they were on the other side of this kind of like hill where this park was, and it could have been right there. But if
They
it
dang sure
seemed,
could have been.
yeah, so it
So-
seemed like 300 yards to me.
So just to help listeners here too, sometimes in trying to judge that, if you are on a hillside that goes down and the hill goes up on the other side, right? It's harder for you to hear the elk below you on the same ridge that you're on than an elk across the ridge where they're bugling straight at you. They'll actually sometimes, sound a little farther away when they're closer because they're in the trees below you and it's not going through that, than when they're over there on a side and they're bugling at you, direct like that. And sometimes they can actually sound a little closer than what they are.
And he said it was windy too, Joe. So with that big
Absolutely.
wind, if you're hearing them, they're a hell of a lot closer than you think.
Depending
Yeah.
on which way the wind's blowing.
Yeah,
because
depending
if
on which way the
blowing
wind's blowing.
towards you,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
going to carry sound towards you.
Yeah.
So really, there's an art, man, to trying to figure out
Yeah.
how close
How
an elk
far.
is, man.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. So cool, John. Rock.
Yeah. Yeah, so we still at this point, the wind had died down a little bit. We're probably getting into the 4 o'clock hour. The
Cool.
wind's died down a little bit, but it's still in our face. So we're still in the game, right? So we make a game plan. My buddy Josh is on the bugle tube. Apparently, while they were having their adventure, they found an elk shed too. So they had brought that down, and my buddy got positioned basically kind of like the timber line, if you will. So he was stuck in a thick cover, and I pushed up, which I told him, I said, hey, I'm going to push up a little bit further here, which ended up being probably like 60 yards, because I had a lot of trees and in front of me or in this general area before it hit the meadow. And the meadow kind of went up at a hill and went back down. And that's where we felt they were back in that bottom. So he's super pumped from the encounter he had. So I'm walking saying, all right, I'm going to get ready. Let me get set up. He lets out a bugle. And I wasn't even I had probably taken I was probably 20 feet from him at that point. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I gotta get up here. And the elk bugle back at us.
Oh,
And it was like,
that's too
and
cool.
it still seemed like the same 300 yards. I was like, all right, but I still can scoot up. So I ended up scooting about 70 yards, like I said, and I was ready to rock. The elk bugles again, and my buddy basically kind of cut him off. And we had a conversation later about this, because he's a big turkey hunter, and that's the way we treated this hunt. Was we're going to go in it like we hunt turkeys, like we're going to be aggressive and we're going to try to cut them off, or we're going to try to. I think if you know animals and you've hunted enough, you don't have to be hunted elk a lot to know how you can be aggressive towards any animal if you can kind of just make them upset, right? There's in that particular time of year,
Timing
we just needed to make them upset.
So let me ask you one question, John. When they were bugling, were they long, drawn out bugles or were they short, raspy bugles?
I'm going to say long drawn out is what I, and again,
And did they chuckle at the end of it? Did they go, did they chuckle at all?
Yeah, I don't think I heard a lot of that. And again, I think that was the wind, and with them being 300, I don't know if I heard a lot of that chuckling. Is that what we're calling it at the end?
Yeah. So the thing is, dude, you're out there and you're hearing your first bugle screaming and you're telling yourself, man, you're wetting your drawers right now, man. You can care less about long, short, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. At that point, So I just
Y'all
knew,
just decided to challenge him.
Hey, Gilbert, we had bulls. All right. We had bulls, and that's what I knew.
Right.
No, but so I get set up. He ends up, my buddy, after he cuts off the bull, he's raking with the antler he had. And then
cool.
There we go.
He raked the tree. He basically broke the antler. He was raking the tree so bad.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
But he only bugled twice.
Mm-hmm.
Once he was raking the tree, the wind shifted immediately. It was in our face the whole time. And it's getting later in the day. So we were anticipating the thermals are going to drop down lower, which where these elk were, it shouldn't have played a part in it. But the wind shifted and went back up the hill. And I don't know if it was the right thing to do, I think in hindsight, it probably was, but I just instinctively just ran up the hill further. Like I went up the hill 20 more yards. And I'd always thought of a lot of animals when they're coming in to fight or they're coming in to check something out, they're not going to come at the same level as you. They usually like to have like the higher ground, right? And I respect that's probably elk as well. So I just got up the hill about 20 yards thinking if he's going to come around like a whitetail would wanting to fight, he's going to come circle around and get in that wind, and he's going to want to smell or come over the top where he can see down in that bottom before he commits.
Perfect.
That was what I was thinking. So I ended up running up the hill about 20 yards and stopping. And as soon as I got there, I had a bunch of trees still in my view. I could just see white tips. And I'll never forget this moment. White tips coming over over the little hill. I could just see him. I'm like, that's an elk right there. He's coming.
Yeah.
I've had buck fever before, and but it was weird because it was really surreal how this. I thought he was 300 yards away. I just ran 20 yards up because the wind shifted, and he's right there. Like
they cover ground.
It seemed
fast,
like
brother.
maybe he was only 100 yards away, or he just moved so quickly.
I think
right?
he was, yeah.
Yeah. So,
but they can go, buddy. I mean, 300 ain't nothing for them to cover.
So I just saw the white tips. I could come over the top, and I was like, I know he's legal. I could see, at least 5 or 6 on each side. Like that was the mindset first, was like, just make sure he's legal. That's one thing, somebody coming out of state who's never hunted elk before, that's not an area that I wanted to deal with. I wanted to make sure, because any elk would have looked huge to me, and I just wanted to make sure of that. So he comes over. He bugles right there on the top, just picture perfect, just bugles right at us. And it was the loudest thing I've ever heard. It was just, it was super cool. I mean, it was amazing. And then he kind of peels off to the left, and there's all this brush and trees right there. And as he gets behind the trees, I draw, and I'm just there waiting for him to clear. He just needed to come through the trees another 2 or 3 steps, and it'd be a beautiful 20-yard shot. He doesn't. He stops right behind. So if you can picture just seeing the whole elk, a whole elk body, but everything is covered up but his head and his antlers. I'm looking at him, and I know my wind is going up that way. But I know he hadn't came into it yet. He probably, when I needed 3 or 4 more steps, that's probably when he was going to hit it. And I looked into the tree, and it was like this pine tree, and it had a good hole, which to me at the time, in that moment at 20 yards, I felt like that hole was right in the vitals. Because I thought when he came off that hill, he was coming broadside. So I settled it, and I was calm. I was not shaking. I felt really good with the execution of the shot.
Important.
And I went right in this, probably like a pie-sized hole. At 20 yards, I felt really good. Released the arrow, went right through the hole and it hit him. And he takes like 3 or 4 more steps out in front of me, and I could see how he was coming. He was going to come down to my buddy, and I thought he was coming more broadside, but he was quartering hard, and maybe even stronger quarter than I thought he was. So my arrow goes back. I could tell once I saw him, it didn't go through. I could see I'm shooting, 31 inch. I got a long draw. I could see a lot of arrow went in him. There was only a little bit showing from the fletching. But I knew it wasn't good. I didn't feel good about it. It wasn't comfortable. It didn't feel comfortable once I saw the arrow. So, but he didn't seem like he was hit much. Like you could tell when a deer gets hit, they roll out. He just kind of trotted off. And I immediately got another arrow, and I'm like, at this point, he kind of circles back and it's cutting back up the hill. And it just was so thick. I tried to stop him. I even drew back again, ready, and I just never could get him to stop before he went up into the thicker country. So at that point, my buddy who's back was super excited because he just found out that I had released an arrow, and they're coming up to me. He's pulling out a video camera, and I'm like, don't say a word, guys. Everybody just calm down. Let's just sit down right here. He's like, did you feel good about it? I'm like, no, I didn't feel good about it.
Yeah.
I mean, this elk can't be more than 100 yards up here in this timber. I know he didn't go far. Let's calm down. So we kind of regrouped a little bit.
That was a good call, and that takes a lot. And it took a lot, first of all, in the awareness. Now, you know, I've been in that position where you're not sure about what's showing up in a tree with
Me
that.
too.
And I've been able to put together the pieces of what was going on and actually make one of those shots too. So that's always a little sketchy anyway, right there. But you know, when you saw the shot and you had the realization and you stayed in the game to be able to see where you hit that, to see how much of your arrow was buried, all of that, and then to have enough control of your emotions to not go through the dog pile screaming, yelling, that you just, in other words, it was where you hit was more important than just sticking an animal. And that's huge right there. So I just want to commend you on that and having the mindset to keep everybody calm, because you're right. If that animal's up there and he's got an arrow, he could bed down, or you could blow him out, and it could be case harass. So good job there. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking, as far as we're going to bump this elk out and he's going to be gone. There was a thought process at one point that was like, should I try to sneak up on this thing? And it just immediately went out. It was one of those things where you always hear, when in doubt, back out. And that's what we did. Literally turned around. We went back down the hill. The best thing of being backcountry backpack hunters is we have our camp with us. So it's getting late in the evening. We literally just go 150, 200 yards down. We didn't think he was going to go up. My personal opinion, I didn't feel like he was going to be continue to go up. I thought he was hit enough that he was going to either bed down where we last saw him, or, you know, maybe go down to water, because I think I got in the guts, right? So it was a restless night. We camp. I'm pulling out Onyx and looking, immediately mark where I shot, and starting to do what I thought was going to be our grid search in the morning. And I wanted to get an area, you know, where you can do the area view and see how much acre or whatever you're going to go ahead and want to grid search. I just kind of set up an area for that. And
so how
that
long were you
night,
thinking with the shot that you made on, how long were you thinking in your head that you'd have to give this animal?
I mean, I was thinking the whole, I don't know. I was almost thinking like the whole day. Like I personally felt like where he was hit, having heard so much about how strong and how these animals can take a lot.
Amazing.
I was thinking he could have been in the next county. Personally, that's where
you
my
didn't
head
push
was
him
that
though,
night.
man. And when they're hurt in the liver or in the guts, they're gonna get sick.
Yeah,
and they're gonna go lay down. And the first place he lays down, as long as coyotes or wolves or something or a bear doesn't get him up, he's gonna stay right there. And then they get a little thing called peritonitis, and that takes in. They get a blood disorder, and it's a long night for them. But at the end of the day, I mean, I shot my first bull I ever killed. This bull that's right here above me, I shot him in the liver. I got a piece of a lung and all of the liver. And Joe made the call, we're going to back out and let him lay. And it was all night, and then 7-8 hours into the morning before we went back out there on him. And when we rolled up on him, he was still warm, wasn't he, Joe?
Yeah. And because when you say you don't know how much of liver you get or how much of the gut you get, and I mean, we've had animals go as long as 26 hours, 30 hours. So you hate to see that, but you hate to even worse go and push one when in that situation. So great decision, man. So go ahead with your story, bud.
Yeah. So but I was disappointed in myself. That just wasn't what I wanted to come out there to do. You wanted to be, as hunters, we wanted to be a clean, ethical kill.
Sure.
So that was weighing on me that night. So we go back to camp. like I said, I started to look at what we were going to do from a grid search in the morning. And that night, we again had, because we didn't really get out of what was considered what I felt like was a good hunting area. That's where some action was happening.
Right.
We camped there. I mean, that's what we had to do. So we had, again, probably 2 or 3 elk bugling, bulls bugling throughout the night again.
Wow.
And we literally had one elk bull that was probably steps from our tent that night. My buddy has a sidearm, and he ended up putting on his chest like, this thing's gonna run us over. Like it was literally steps from the tent.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah,
man.
it was pretty crazy. I was like, did you guys hear that? My one buddy slept through the whole thing. I don't know how he did that. But so we were
Everybody's
in
like
it.
me.
We were in a little highway at that point. So
Mhm.
ideally you wouldn't want to camp there, but I think we had to do that. But that was a cool experience to kind of see through. So the next morning we get up, I probably like 7 o'clock. We waited until it got light. I wanted to go back to where I shot, and just because we didn't even go back over there to look for blood or nothing. It was just, let's go.
Good job.
Yeah. Real good job.
Yeah.
So we ended up going back on basically the same trail the elk took to get to us. We could just see a nice worn out trail. So we got on that. I was ready to go, release in hand, because I was in a position where you never know what's going to happen here.
Absolutely.
I should have, this is one thing I would have done differently. Probably should have walked in front of these guys. But they ended up where we went, they ended up walking first. So I had both of my buddies were in front of me, because we were at this point just walking to where I last shot. We weren't even going in to look yet. But as soon as we crested the hill, the elk, as I mentioned earlier, with the white tips coming over, as soon as we crested the hill, I could hear them in front of me saying, shoot. I was like, well, what are you talking about? I'm definitely not taking another elk. I mean, I have one. It's a burnt tag if we don't find this thing, right? And they're like, no, he's right there. And I looked around them, and the elk is bedded 10 feet from where I shot him.
Wow.
He must have went up and realized he couldn't go up any further. He must have just came back down and bedded right.
Really sick.
Yeah. So he was
Wow.
bedded right there. Once they saw the first buddy was there, he ended up standing up. I was able to just get the range on him because I wanted to make sure. I didn't think he was going to go anywhere. 46 yards. I just got around my buddy, told him not to move, and drilled him right there. He didn't go but 10 yards and fell over.
Fantastic.
Oh yeah, boy. Dude, you
At
did
that
the right
point, I was
thing,
like-
John.
Oh
It
yeah.
was I tell you what, guys, it was bittersweet though, because I respect elk, all the animals that I hunt. It wasn't that kumbaya. Like for me, it wasn't. I don't know what it was. I think that's gonna drive my hunger to go do it again and try to get one just the right way.
Yeah, and look, brother, we've all been there. Okay,
100%.
everybody, every one of us that have done this bow hunting thing have made shots that, man, if we just could have done it different, right? And we all have that. And it was the longest night of my life when I killed that bull right there. And I had been on some back ends of shooting bulls and not being able to recover them, right? So it had really gotten me questioning. And look, man, I've killed truckloads of whitetails and pigs and stuff like that. But having one of these critters wounded and not finding it, it pains your soul, So I get where you're coming from. So taken away from that, would you, if you had it to do over again, would you have took that shot through that hole, or would you wait next time for a clear view?
Yeah, exactly, Gilbert. I would not have taken the shot.
Good answer.
I just felt like I thought I had a really good picture of it, and just I didn't.
Yeah.
I think I probably rushed it. Really, I mean, I felt like I
Been
didn't
there,
rush it because
done
I
that.
took my time.
Yeah.
But
You're in that vortex.
I think I saw what I wanted to see. Versus
For sure. For sure.
If he's going to step out 3 or 4 feet,
Yeah.
is that what you need? That's what
Right.
you need.
That's right.
And if he blows out, I mean, guys, it was day one. Like,
yeah, man, we got
whatever.
another shot. Yeah.
Day
You can hunt
one.
him again,
Day one, and they're bugling all around you.
Yeah.
right?
So yeah, hindsight, definitely, I
Sweet.
would have done that differently for sure.
Well,
So,
and
lesson
that's what
learned.
we're here to do is with our listeners and everything else is let's talk about that because there are so many good things that you've done. And then now we've gotten to an area where, man, if I have it to do over again, it's the same thing for me. I've passed a lot of scenarios and a lot of shots that just wasn't the right thing for me to do because I've been in your shoes and because I have had that done. The cool thing, brother, is that you got to lay hands on this bull because you did the right thing, John.
Yes,
Y'all
you
made the decision to back out and to wait and to actually sneak back in there and not go back in there just tromping around and not giving a dang. Y'all are actually looking, and all of a sudden your buddies are like, oh, man, he's right there,
Yeah.
and he was 10, like you said, 10 yards from where you shot him,
Yeah.
but that's because you didn't push him.
Yeah, you talked about your patience earlier, how you wasn't patient waiting for your buddies and this and that.
Yeah.
But really, when it really came down to you needing it, like you had the right patience, because if you would have made a different move after that shot, Joe always talks about, we always talk about what you do after the shot is sometimes
Way more important.
happens before the shot
Yeah.
or coming up to the shot, so you were 100% right, because I've been there in that position, just like Gilbert said. I shot a bull one time and I didn't stop him and I hit him back and hit him in the liver, and I got impatient. I was out there by myself, and whenever I should have just pulled out and went back to the truck, I gave it like 2 hours and then went and I bumped the bull and I never found him, never saw him again,
He'd go 3 miles.
Yeah,
Wow.
he went like 7, dude. I found him
Yeah.
like 6 days later.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, you nailed it in every, I think every part of your hunt, really.
For sure.
Yeah,
John, do you attribute that to your whitetail training, to your whitetail bow hunting techniques?
Yeah.
Do you attribute that patience and waiting for them, bow hunting and stuff like that?
But at the same time, I heard him say a lot of things that I can tell this guy did. He's been through his
Homework.
resources. He's been listening. He's been studying. Just when you were talking about thermals alone, there's so many people that come from the East that don't have a clue
Don't
what a
understand
thermal
it.
is, man.
Right.
And, when you talked about getting on the same level as the animal, that's something that you just don't pick up on your own because you don't do that back East. I mean, you're pretty much on the level with the animal there. So I can, I can
hey,
tell
Joe,
you-
don't get us. Come on, we got some hills here in Virginia, and I hunt West Virginia too. So we got some mountains
Yeah,
out there.
that's true. That's
So,
John,
but
look,
yeah,
I'm
I
so
appreciate it, Joe.
passionate.
No, I
I'm
know
so
where you're coming
passionate
from.
about what you did and how you waited. And you can ask these guys, the Venezuelan mafia will always talk about, the laws of Beto. And for me, it's a 2-hour deal, right? I watched my bull fall and pretty well saw him go down on video and everything and heard him crashing around. And I still waited an hour and 35 minutes before we walked up on him, just because I know what kind of athletes these critters are, man. And if you bump one of them, you will never find them again. But will you let him lay down and get sick and everything, where you actually snuck back in there on him, got the second shot off of him? I mean, Joe's done it, just the past year. I mean, Joe, how long did it take y'all to find that bull, Joe? 36 hours?
Yeah, it was 30 hours before we found
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I mean, and again, you did the right thing, man. I'm so proud of you guys and the work y'all put in. But it's like Joe said, the investment you made in yourself and all of the training that you got from, whether it was from the internet or the stuff that you derived from all of your training and everything, led you to where you were releasing that shot and then knowing that you needed to back out and take the time to.
John, how long was your
stop.
journey of knowledge, man? I mean, when you decided you were going to do this,
Great question, Joe.
how many hours did you, spend soaking stuff in and growing the elk knowledge?
Yeah. So I mean, we probably planned the trip, probably for about a year, when we said, hey, we're going to go, this is happening. So I was probably consuming something weekly, like whatever it was, if it, y'all's podcast, even the hunting public, the born and raised guys, like anything that I could get that was elk hunting related.
Right.
And with the knowledge I've known just from whitetails and turkey hunting and that type of stuff, and kind of fusing the two to like, okay, this makes sense. I can relate to this, to what I've done in the past. And
Or even fishing, we've connected it to fishing.
yeah, Gilbert, I know,
Yeah.
has mentioned numerous times about, hey, you don't leave fish to go find fish.
Right.
Gilbert, I
Exactly.
know, I've heard you say that.
Yeah. No, and look, man, we can't thank you enough for, joining in with us today and giving us a little bit of feedback on what we've said to you. A lot of guys, they'll write in the show, but I didn't really know, Joe, that he was, he listened to our podcast or any of that stuff. I just knew that he'd sent in something to you and, maybe you'd listen to a couple of podcasts or whatever, but I'm hoping that our knowledge that we give out helps guys bridge the gap. Do you feel like some of that knowledge that we spit weekly helped you guys this year, build that bridge between not knowing anything about out west to now feeling armed, like when we get there, hey man, we're gonna make this deal happen?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've had conversations between me and the other two guys. And I'll tell you this, the gentleman who was doing the calling, Josh, he learned a lot from you guys as far as like being aggressive, that rut scenario where he's raking the tree. I mean, that type of stuff was from you guys, and how you guys kind of paint that picture of what's happening, right? He did a couple cow calls in that sequence to kind of make it seem like, so
look, that's what killed, that's the whole thing that killed the cat, brother. As soon as he hit that tree, that bull couldn't stand it anymore. He figured there was a hot cow down there, bulls displaying for a hot cow. Y'all really wasn't talking to him. You were actually talking to that cow that he introduced there. Shoot, dude, it was on like Donkey Kong, and he was coming to find out who was in his world, man. So when you saw them white tips coming up, man, it had to be like, this is,
and I want to emphasize this, and because this is somebody that came from back east, had never been out west, had never seen an elk, had never heard an elk, got an OTC tag in Colorado, and on day one of their hunt shot an elk. And there's a lot of people going, he needs to go buy a lottery ticket, right?
I heard that on Facebook too.
And look, here's where I am with that, dude, is that people talk about luck. It ain't luck when you're trying. Luck is nothing but skill and opportunity meeting. And you have to create those opportunities. You went down into a section. You heard that elk. You went into those elk. You got your buddies down there. They started calling to the animal. It wasn't where you were sitting on a stump taking a nap and a bull walked by and you shot it. You were trying. You were putting in effort. You had learned skill sets. You had prepped yourself. You did the logistics. You found the spot. You did the conversation. There is nothing lucky about that, dude. And that's
more than anything, the place, and we say this a lot when we're fishing, you're only as good as the area you're fishing in. If the fish are there, you figure them out and catch them. It's the same way for you. You were only going to be as good as that area you laid your boots down in. So bravo to you guys and looking at areas and figuring out, hey man, this looks elky. We say fishy. This looks elky right here. They're going to be elk in this area.
Finding sign. I'm taking pictures of beds.
Yeah, man. Bravo to you. We heard them that night while we're setting up camp. I mean, there was nothing in that whole setup that was wrong. Everything was right, especially when you heard them setting up, right?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, John. I was going to say last week we talked about being aggressive, which actually means being active, and that's what you did. You were active. You kept grinding. You went down there. You heard the bugles and continued. Well, I do have one question that's I'm kind of wondering about, which some of the listeners may be wondering about too, is what were the logistics in getting the meat?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Getting the meat home because you got
Chad, great question.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Chad, because I was going to say, hey, the story's not ended yet because just
the
now
war just starts.
Right.
Yeah.
You haven't taken pictures yet. Dude, what was your thought like once you finally were like, oh my God, we did down, right? And tell us about taking care of the bull and tell us about getting that meat back to the Jeep. And then you guys did this on day 2, right? Recovery.
Yeah, it's morning of day 2.
You don't even have a plane ticket to fly out yet for another few days. So tell us the rest of the story.
Yeah. So once the bull was down, knowing that the shot wasn't good and what we talked about, to me, having that bull right there and get that quick shot in to me was the blessing, because that
Damn
bull was
right.
down and we were processing that meat. We did take a couple pictures together as a group. But I was pretty adamant about, like, we are going to go ahead and take care of this elk and start the process. It was in the morning, you know, it was going to get warmer. I wanted to respect that animal as much as possible for what I put it through. And we were going to make sure we kept every piece of the meat we could on that elk. So there's 3 guys. So and again, on the flight in, because I'm new to the gutless method, not done that before. I was watching videos, how-to videos on that process.
Perfect.
And it seemed intimidating. So guys that are listening in that like have never done that before, and you watch a couple videos and it seems like it's going to be a little too much. I mean, if you've butchered a whitetail,
It's just
the
a bigger
gutless
version.
method is
The
not a
same
big
thing.
deal,
Right.
right? So it's just so much a larger animal, and that was the biggest thing that, like,
Yeah.
just seeing them and putting hands on antlers and seeing how big this thing was like, wow.
Got a scene.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Awesome.
Look
Wow.
at that,
Oh,
bro.
that's a
Very
nice,
cool.
nice one.
What a
yeah.
beautiful
Beautiful
bull.
It was a
So-
6x5. He had one point broke off on his left side there, but
He was
man, just
fighting rascal, man.
I've heard
That's
some
awesome,
people
bro.
that when they kill their elk, will be like, yeah, you know, he wasn't a 300-inch bull. I'm like, guys,
Oh,
what are you
my
talking about?
cares?
Any antler, any animal you kill
With a
Yeah.
is a
bow.
trophy. If you're
100%.
going to Colorado OTC,
Absolutely,
you
man.
better be
100%,
proud of
bro.
that bull.
Absolutely.
Damn proud of that
I
bull.
kill a trophy cow this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it eats the same as
I
mine
don't
too,
care,
right?
man.
Yeah,
It can't eat
right.
the horns. Can't eat the antlers.
Yeah. Oh, guys, gorgeous.
So you've processed it?
Yeah, we ended up doing one side, did the gutless method. Inner loins went in a bag because we were eating those the next day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know why. I just had this inclination to go ahead and bring some spices in a Ziploc bag. And thank goodness I did.
I love it. The man was prepared. Thinking
Yeah,
like
Hell
that.
I
yeah.
just thought, why not? You know, it's not
Yeah.
a lot of weight, and maybe, you know, maybe we'll get lucky, you know.
Maybe's ass. Y'all
yeah.
killed it, dude.
So we ended up quartering it out, you know, obviously, and then we ended up boning it out. So we boned out all the quarters just to cut down on the weight.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because it's heavy.
yeah, it's heavy. So we had basically where we ended up shooting the elk at. We probably had, it was right around from the Onyx. It was 1,000 feet of elevation up to get back on the same plane as the Jeep. And it was pretty steep country, and it was a lot of blowdown where we were. So we ended up, because it was the next morning, we ended up cutting it all up, quartering it up. We ended up at this point, I'm trying to think when we ended up cutting it all up, we put it in game bags, and we made one trip up to the truck, up to the Jeep. We got it up on basically the flat, the same elevation as the Jeep. It's basically 2 miles from where the elk was shot to the Jeep.
Oh, not bad. Yeah.
Yeah, not bad at all. So,
So I want everybody to hear that too. This was, I mean, from the, most people from the trail point are going to go in 6 miles to kill an elk. You were 2 miles in where you hit.
Yeah.
yeah.
Pretty
So
cool.
we made one trip back up to not to the truck, but just up to the top.
Mhm.
Found a good shaded spot for the meat. Came back down and did it one more time. And then we just kind of leapfrog, took all that other meat, one trip straight to the Jeep and did it again.
Did you make you a little pole and hang it from up there, or did you just lay it on the ground?
No, we ended up paracoordinate it, getting up and getting it off the ground.
Yeah, good.
Gotcha.
At each
Good,
quarter,
good idea.
every bag went up and
Gotcha.
kept it off the ground.
Good.
And the boning out process was pretty clean and easy too. And when you felt the
yeah.
bone of that animal, of an elk leg, how
Serious.
heavy, I mean, it
Oh
felt like
my
it was like
God.
almost 8 to 10 pounds. Like, I don't know what
Every
you guys
one
think.
of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot. We got the
100%.
meat back to the Jeep. And at this point, because this is a rental, we are flying right back and forth.
Mhm.
We ended up going into the local town, and we, beforehand, logistically, I made sure to know where the meat processing and the butchers were in the area. And a funny story, I ended up asking a question on that on the Facebook Colorado page, hunting page. And I was immediately told, you're going to be there for 6 days. You don't need to know about a butcher. You just be lucky. You hopefully have some, fun. And
Just ignorant.
so it was interesting. So after I killed the elk, we took a nice picture, and I went back to that post, and because he said you probably have like a 5% chance of killing one, which it probably is true. But I was like, hey, I guess I'm in the 5% club now, and I sent him a picture. And I said, I'm glad I'm glad we did the research to find out where a meat processing plant is, because who would want to kind of do that research on the fly just to say, there's not a good chance of killing one. Let me not worry about the meat, which is the most precious part of the entire hunt.
The way I like to see it is, you go into the woods, you have 100% chance. You don't go out there and do it, you have a 0% chance. As far as I'm concerned, you go out, everybody goes out, and you have 100% chance of doing that until you don't. So, that's a great mindset, man.
Yeah. So we ended up dropping the meat off.
Did you take your meat to the processor and have it shipped?
No, we did not. That was a conversation. I did research ones that did ship, but once we got to the place and talk through the process, I think it was roughly $500 to ship the meat from Colorado to my house. What we ended up doing is we stopped in when we were flying back to Denver or driving back to Denver. We stopped in a place and got some dry ice. I bought a couple coolers at Walmart just to get us back to Denver, and we carried it on. Each of us, I split the meat equally because Josh and Richard did equal parts, and I would not have got that elk if it wasn't for Josh's calling. And Richard, he was the man that was he's the one that was really in shape. One of the guys that's like going to keep pushing you, and he did a lot of the navigating for us. So I split the meat evenly between us three, and I bought a backpack cooler and it carried on meat. And it was solid frozen for the whole trip. Even when I got back to Florida, all of it was still frozen solid. So they put some in their frame packs and they carried some on.
What about the horns?
Yeah, so the antlers, I ended up going through a taxidermy service, and that is something that I could have carried on. I could have worked that process out, but with my frame pack and my bow, with the antlers, me by myself coming into the Florida airport and having to drive home, it was just going to be too much for me to try to manage. So I did do a European mount, and they it shipped those to Virginia.
Oh, cool.
So man, I do have those in Virginia now.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So when you took the meat to the processor, you just had him freeze it and package it for you?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
And he got it done
I
before
literally
you flew
dropped
out.
off the quarter bag, all the hind quarter bags and all the game bags. And they literally just said they did a lot of it in the ground burger and the steaks, whatever your preference was.
Oh, he did it then.
Yeah, he did it there.
That?
Yeah. So
wow.
Because of the time frame, we dropped it off on a Wednesday. I did have to pay like $150 more because it was a expedited cost to get it done. But since we were, it was worth it to get that meat. So we were ground meat and vacuum seal bags on the flight.
That's awesome, man. Bro. That's awesome, bud.
So cool.
Congratulations on a terrific hunt. Terrific.
John, what a great story. Unbelievable hunt. In the preparation that you guys put in is the key to y'all's success. Y'all plan to succeed. Y'all planned to succeed.
You planned to succeed. And I didn't hear you once going, it's so funny. I mean, you talked about that in one conversation about bringing the seasons. You said, well, I might get lucky. That's the only time I ever heard that. Not up until this point. I never heard you once saying, well, our plan is, you said you had a goal of hearing an elk and seeing an elk, right? And that was two of your main goals that you had there. But I never heard where you said, well, I don't think we're going to get one. I never heard that, man. And you guys went in there and you made it happen. And that's what I want a lot of people to understand. And people can chalk that up to whatever they want to. Look, the first time I went up into the mountains, I killed an elk. I just kept killing them after that, man. So, you know, the same thing could happen for you. And if you ever stop putting in the same amount of work, it might not happen. You know what I mean? To be consistently successful, it takes doing those things and eliminating those failure points and doing the things that are going to help put you in position and create those opportunities. So again, man, you know, go ahead, buy yourself a lottery ticket, but I don't think you're going to do much good with it because, you know.
Yeah, John, and now I got to tell you, you know, we've had you on the show, part of the podcast group now. Now it's time for you to tell us what unit you were in. I'm just kidding.
Oh, what unit were y'all in?
I'm just kidding, brother.
Hey, we even had fun after the hunt because we went and trout fished. Cole, I know you were mentioning what we did after. We went and trout fished. I mean,
Yeah,
my buddy
awesome.
brought his fly rod. Like, there's just so much to do out there. If you know, people that are listening that are just, okay, yeah, I'm going to go there. Maybe I don't kill an elk. You're going to get to see the stars. You're going to get out there. Trout fish, you know, we ate trout with elk, tenderloin, under the stars, and got to reminisce about the hunt.
Does it get
like
any better than
I mean, never seen before. I mean, the stars are so bright, man. It's like they're on top of you.
You can see the Milky Way.
Absolutely.
The
called in
CEO,
another
Rob
bull.
Canales, took a picture of the Milky Way, dude. It was the most beautiful picture I've ever seen, man.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, I probably took 500 pictures. We called in another 6x6 2 days later at like 15 yards.
Yeah.
Really?
And we got that one on video. My buddy
That's
called it
too
in.
cool, man.
And that was like in between two like outfitter camps.
Okay,
They were
okay.
in a
Now you're
totally
showing
different
off.
unit.
Now you're showing off.
Oh no, it was. I think we got it was just an amazing trip. It was an epic.
So I don't want you to
So
leave,
cool,
John,
man.
because I want you to be part of this. And I want to thank you for that. I hope our listeners got a lot of value. There was a lot of nuggets in that, man. There were,
Heck
you know,
yeah.
for a guy doing what you guys did, some funny stuff too. You know, them guys calling in an elk without the buddy. They're like, yeah, let's show it. You know, that was cool.
Check us out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're going to go to our ElkBros mailbox, and we said at the beginning that we have, and I think this is something that you can speak to because of your three groups, and it's something that all of us can speak to. It was I got this from a grinder, and you know, I've gotten letters like this so many times, and it's real serious, and I didn't put the person's name there because I think things are still workable between him, and you understand what I'm talking about right now. But here's the letter I got. And again, I'm gonna say it's anonymous. It could be any of y'all out there in any state. But he says, I first want to thank you all for your hard work putting out this content. You guys are awesome. He said, my question is, I have a friend who I have archery elk hunted with for the past 10 years and has been my hunting partner through it all. I've been experiencing conflict with him, feeling that I'm doing all the work and learning new areas, the scouting and calling. I'm the one with all the knowledge and calling experience, and I never get an opportunity to harvest. Most of the time, I'm just as happy for someone else getting the harvest as if I'm the one taking the shot. I always try to be very selfless. However, I'm just getting tired of doing all the work and him just showing up for the reward. It seems like the past few years he's been riding my coattails. At this point, I'd actually rather solo hunt or find a new hunting partner than keep fueling this frustration. How would you handle this situation? And he says also, this may be a question best answered by Manano. I'm sure he contemplated this very thing while hunting with Luis a time or two. Sorry, Luis, that was a joke. But in all seriousness, how would you break off this bromance? And this is a tough one, man. It's a tough one for a lot of people out there. Anybody want to take a stab at it first of all? John, let me ask you, since you're our guest, what do you think about this question, man?
Yeah, so I take it from the perspective of like, you know, maybe this gentleman who is apparently riding the coattails, maybe he's a little insecure about his calling, or, you know, maybe the gentleman who is more knowledgeable, it sounds like, from a hunting perspective, could approach it with like, hey, you know, do you want to learn how to call? Like, can I show you how to do this? Or is there something you have questions on with, you know, maybe approach it from an educational perspective with his buddy, because it seems like they do have a relationship that he doesn't want to burn. So I think he would probably find out why is it that you want to engage in the other aspects of the hunting? Is there's concerns that we can kind of address and maybe talk through that over a beer and just, get a gauge for, it's probably more to it than he just doesn't want to do it. With me, I'm not a good caller, so my buddy calls a lot. It doesn't mean I don't want to. It just means that it's just not my skill set. So maybe he needs to pulse that a little bit and pull that string.
Great
Oh, what do you
answer.
think, brother? You've had several hunting partners.
Yeah, man. This is a tough one for me too, because I've found myself in this same exact situation, throughout the years on, hunting elk. I've been through, several different ones. And, some of them didn't end in the way to where we could just talk it through or whatever. It ended badly,
Mhm.
But like, for instance, like Kyle and I, when we've hunted together, and this year Kyle and I didn't get to hunt together, and Kyle's been used to me kind of just like jumping in and taking the reins and doing the calling and stuff. And this year, out of our control, we've had to hunt apart and Kyle was like put to the fire, like and I told him, I was like, dude, you gotta call. And finally he did, and he ended up killing a bull, but it kind of forced him into having to go see what it was like to not have, that crutch behind him, or that ability back there behind him to draw that bull past him. So maybe even just just the guy should think about it like, well, dang, if I didn't have my buddy there to call me, would I be harvesting an elk? So it needs to be reciprocated.
Yeah. And man, look, it's an honest conversation that needs to be had, right, between two guys. And he's got to be brutally honest with the way that he's feeling. He can't sugarcoat it. He's got to let him know, look, man, I kind of feel like I'm on the short end of this thing. And for me, this is how I would set up. I don't feel like you're adding anything to my group. You know what I mean? I'm doing all the calling. I'm doing all the heavy lifting. Let me know, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to step out there and do these things? Because if not, I'm willing to part ways and move on with somebody else to hunt, because I can't keep doing this. I feel like I'm holding myself back because I'm always having to pick you up. And look, it's a tough conversation to have, but it is definitely one that you got to have, because we only got so many times up on the mountain, and we only do this once a year. So, and some of us are a lot luckier than others can do it for months at a time. But for me, I'm not spending one day with a guy that I can't get along with. Right. And it doesn't have the same values that I have when we're in the woods. So for me, it's all about having a conversation, right? And a poignant conversation that's candid and that is definitely straight and to the point. And then, based on his reply and based on his, the way he takes this will depend on whether I move forward or whether we stay together.
Chav and I have hunted together 39 years, man, and Chav's never been a caller. Right. But Chav's always had his own skill set to be able to go and to do what he wants to. We've hunted separately, we've hunted together. And I think that's something that partners can do. I mean, just like we did on our hunt this year, sometimes you can go, and we understood that we were going to separate out to locate elk, right?
Yeah.
And there were times that we were more effective together to do that. But I never found that really, if you are a good caller and you have a good skill set and you have a good partner, it never stopped me from killing elk, even when Chav and I were together. Either he was going to have the shot or I was going to have the shot. And, we worked it that way. Whoever had the shot, we were going to put that elk down. I mean, it almost seemed that, I've had this so many times, calling elk in for somebody else, that a bull comes around in a different direction. And
I do know how he's feeling, though. I do know where he's coming from, because
totally get it.
You tend to not have that part of your hunting prowess with you when you're actually the caller, right? I feel like I'm a whole lot less guarded when I'm thinking more about pulling the bull and doing the things I need to do for said guy that's set up in the setup. But you're right, Joe. I mean, there's several times that you and I've been together that you could have killed a bull with me and did. right? Bull's coming straight at us. We have the conversation. Bull goes right, Joe shoots. Bull goes left, Big O shoots, right? I mean, but those are the things that you got to work out together. And for me, I get where that guy's coming from and what he's saying, but you're right. 100%, Joe. The guy should be able to do it both ways, but it feels like there's some underlying things that.
Well, what he's saying is he's actually feeling like he's the only one doing the work, though.
Right.
And that's one thing, like with our group that we've had, one thing that I've always said is I don't mind teaching people, but I want people to grow. If they're not going to grow, they need to go because they're not helping the group. Then it's dependent on one person or a couple people to do it. And we all need to add, we're only as good as our weakest link, right?
That's right.
So, but people bring different skill sets sometimes as well. And that's the other thing to consider. Like, if your partner, isn't doing all the work in the scouting and the calling, well, what's he doing on the side of, as far as getting gear ready or cooking a camp or, do you have different roles in that sense as well? Because, there's some people add a whole lot to a camp with a different skill set, man, and just with their attitude and their positiveness. But if you are feeling down, look, here's the great thing about a hunting partner. It's not a marriage, man. I mean, if you don't feel like somebody has your back and you can't talk to this person, then there's an issue anyway. If there's something going on and you guys are pals,
like I said,
for 10 years, you got to have that conversation. Say, look, dude, I want you to call for me, and then put them in that position and make it happen, and then have faith in them doing that as well. Right. So
hunting solo sucks. I'll say it right now. After hunting with you guys this year and me not having a Kyle and then going back out by my, I was like, screw the hunt by yourself. You know what I mean? Because it's fun to be able to even if somebody does, like, if Kyle's not a world champion caller, neither am I by any means, but at the same time, just like Joe said, he adds something to my group that I would rather have be there, even though he can't necessarily get behind me and call in every single bull. I know he can call in something, and that's what we'll work with, and we'll grow from that point forward. I would rather have my buddies with me,
every day,
and have that good camaraderie and stuff like that, rather than be solo. So think about that before you split up with your bud.
Yeah,
I don't know that. I'm trying to think. In 12 years, I've never hunted solo. I've always had a buddy or a guide with me, right? So I mean, I've never gone out just by myself. I mean, I take that back. I went out a couple of times, but I was mule deer hunting. I wasn't elk hunting. So I'd already harvested an elk. I had a mule deer tag, and but at the end of the day, I'm like Joe. I'm like Cole. I'd rather have my buddies with me, man, that are on my hip with me and sharing the moment and stuff. I mean, that makes it even that much more special.
Absolutely, man. Life's about memories, and I love the idea of how many memories that Chav and I have together, that all of us as a group have together, and now a memory that John has shared with us. That that's something that we get to have, that we get to hold.
I feel I was.
What's
there.
your buddy's name? Who called your bull in? What's your buddy's name?
Josh Profit.
Josh will never ever forget the first bull he ever called in for his buddy, and he'll never forget the first bull he called in on camera because he's got it on camera. But the first bull I ever called in,
he called it.
Yeah, the first bull I ever called in my life, Chav, right there. That's the first bull I ever called in my life. Chav shot that bull. And I'll never forget that hunt as long as I live. It's the first time I had a bull really start responding to me and calling and, really starting to get better with my calls and whatnot. But it's for archery. I called in a bull one time for a buddy of mine with a muzzleloader, but the first archery bull I ever called in was for Chav.
And he's behind the bow next year. We're going back, and he's going to be behind the bow.
Absolutely.
So I got to build my skill set up.
Y'all aren't going multiple tags?
No.
Y'all are only just buying one tag?
Yeah, I think that's how we're going to do it.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
I do.
nothing wrong with that.
You can always go back to town and get another tag.
Yeah,
Heck
that's
yeah.
what I was thinking. We're bringing two
Concentrate on-
bows. We're bringing two bows, but only one
Yeah,
tag.
I think that's
Gotcha.
all.
And they did so
Oh.
much work for me. Like I'm dedicated to learn
Hey,
how to
okay.
bugle.
What a
and
great
Try to
group.
take it to it next year.
What a
That's-
great
that's
group of
solid,
guys,
man.
man.
That's solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And
Them guys ride the river together, Joe.
well, let me tell you what, man. Me and that guy have been together a lot of years, and I've had situations where we're side by side and an elk comes running in, and there's just something about me, man. When that shot shows up, I just like friggin' go red and kill things. I don't know what happens, but Chav,
She goes
Chav
blind.
Chav is like, he's always so thrilled for me as much as I mean, the most thrilled that I've ever been, is when he's taking his, man. It's
Yeah.
just, it just really, that's how it is. And that's what's so cool. And what you're saying, John, about, you dedicating yourself to your guys next year and giving it up like that. That's just friggin' cool, man. And
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a lot
John, have you seen our base camp from ElkBros?
So if I learned enough on the podcast, I am definitely signing up for the base camps now.
Fantastic,
I was
man.
reading
Listen,
it
Great
all about the
content.
academy.
you'll
so-
learn a whole lot. And then if you're going to be brushing up on your calling skills for next year and everything, man, gotta look at Mr. Paul Medell and those guys. We believe in him and him talking about how you understand elk language. I mean, the knowledge that you gain out of this one and the other stuff you're going to put in the bank, you're going to end up calling in elk for your buddy next year, brother.
I'm
Absolutely.
hoping so. Definitely going to sign up
No,
for the
ain't
base
no
camp
hope,
for
brother.
sure.
You can make it. You can make it happen. I promise you.
Gilbert,
You know,
close us out,
that's it.
man.
Guys, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe, rate, and review us. You got to go to Apple Podcasts or iTunes to review us, and you can check out more elk hunting content at ElkBros.com. And just a reminder to, if all our listeners out there would like their questions answered on our show, just send your questions to info@ElkBros.com. That's INFO@ElkBros.com. And like we say down here in Texas, husbands kiss your wives, wives kiss your husbands. Keep your broadhead sharp and your powder dry. And we'll see you next week right here on Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Hey guys,
Peace,
and for all
peace.
your
My
grinders
signature.
out there. And
Ciao,
John,
y'all.
he's gonna sing one for you. I don't know if you've heard Tony, man. Here's some music from our brother Tony
Tony
Winter
Winter.
closing out the show. Peace. Thanks,
Peace,
John.
fellas.
Peace out.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for having me.
John,
The man on top of the world didn't fall there. He knew how to earn his keep with a wall there. He could look anyone in the eye, never was afraid of goodbye. His strength was unimaginable. Through the darkest winter storm, never was above the norm. You gotta believe he's unstoppable. And if he'd never done it, he would tell you so. Never complain, it's the way life goes. The man on top of the world didn't fall there. You could see his veins through his t-shirt, determination on his face. Never heard of the word failure, never criticized a race, and I always thought this man could fly, didn't have no doubts or wonder why. And I know he will never crash and burn. He set the tone, that's how I learned. The man on top of the world didn't fall there. your song.